morning, everyone. Dear colleagues, excellencies, I declare open today's meeting. My name is Rolando Castro. I am the Deputy Minister of Energy and Environment of Costa Rica. The President invited me to preside over the Assembly's deliberation for this ministerial meeting. It is an honor for me and my country to be here with all of you today as we have discussions on Agenda Item 7, Ministerial Plenary Meeting, Scaling Up Finance for Renewables. I would like to warmly welcome all delegations present. I would also like to extend a welcome to the Director General of IRENA, Mr. Francesco La Camara, and our keynote speaker, His Excellency Dr. Thani Ahmed Al-Seyoudi, Minister of State for Foreign Trade of the United Arab Emirates, and Dr. Vera Songwe, Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa. I would also like to welcome our moderator, His Excellency Mr. Gabriel Quijandria, Minister of Environment of Peru, and the distinguished members of our panel. The Assembly has before it a background note with the same title, contained in document A/11/BN/3. The focus of our discussion will be we will hear opening remarks by the Director General on this important issue, as well as remarks from our keynote speakers. This will then be followed by a panel discussion moderated by His Excellency Mr. Gabriel Quijandria. I now invite the Director General for his introductory remarks. Director General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice President, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Ministerial Meeting on Scaling Up Finance for Renewables. Allow me to welcome my dearest friend, the UAE Minister Al-Seyoudi, and Ms. Vera Song of UNECA, who will set the scene for our deliberations, and Mr. Gabriel Quijandria for moderating the session. Scaling up renewable energy investment is more important today than even before, as we navigate the twin challenges of global health and climate crisis. From the onset of the pandemic, IRENA has strongly advocated for the alignment of short-term recovery efforts with the medium and long-term objective of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. In 2020, IRENA released its first global renewable outlook, which outlined how energy transformation driven by renewables can bring far-reaching benefits in terms of energy security, energy access, and environmental protection and sustainable development. The report charts an ambitious yet feasible pathway to implement climate objectives while delivering jobs and economic growth. It also intends to guide the design of economic recovery packages and call for considerable scaling up of low carbon investment up to $130 trillion of US dollar if we wish to reach zero emission in 2050. As we are far from this trajectory, IRENA's recent global landscape on renewable energy finance report finds that global investment in renewable energy have risen steadily in the past years, but they remain far below the required levels. From about $300 billion US globally in recent years Annual investment to renewable must triple to $800 billion by 2050 to realize the economic and social resilience aligned with climate science. Channeling such level of investments to energy transitions require a steady pipeline of investor-ready and scalable renewable projects, bankable renewable projects. And ARENA is committed to provide comprehensive project facilitation support to members to speed up the building of project pipelines and to facilitate access to finance. With the guidance and support of members, the agency has invested considerable resource over the years in a suite of project facilitation services that support countries in their energy transition endeavor. In 2020, ARENA consolidated these services into a coherent additional space to provide project facilitation support for all members. This work is integrated within the Climate Investment Platform, led by ARENA, UNDP, and C4All, in close cooperation with the Green Climate Fund. Since its inception at the Climate Action Summit in September 2019, the Climate Investment Platform is aiming to mobilize investment and facilitate access to finance in support of country and their ambitious nationally determined contributions. I look forward to hearing your insight on the opportunities and challenges and how ARENA, as the global organization for the transformation of the energy system, can be leveraged in our common effort to scale up investment in renewable energy. So that, with your permission, Mr. Vice President, and before I hand back the floor to you, I'd like to show a short video. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much to all.
Our future relies on renewable energy. We need to transform the way we are powering our world. Renewables will be central to delivering energy to 790 million people without electricity. By transforming energy, we will create millions of jobs and boost our economy. We need to reach $2 trillion of annual energy transition-related investments within the next 3 years. Investments that would increase global GDP by 1% and create millions of jobs. Together, we can create opportunities to connect capital to renewable projects.
Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director General, for your remarks and for a very interesting video that we just saw. And now invite His Excellency, Dr. Thani Ahmed Al-Seyoudi, to deliver his keynote address. Excellency, you have the floor. I think we have a situation with His Excellency. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass the floor to Dr. Vera Songwi to deliver his keynote address. Dr. Songwi, you have the floor.
You can hear me now. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I see you nodding with relief, Director General. Let me start by saying Happy New Year, because it is still January, so I think we can still say that. It is an immense pleasure for the Economic Commission for Africa and for myself to be joining you today for this Ministerial Roundtable on scaling up finance for renewables. Your Excellency, Mr. Rolando Castro, Deputy Minister of Energy, of the Environment for Costa Rica and Vice President of this Assembly, Your Excellency, my friend, Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, Your Excellency, Dr. Thani Ahmed Al-Zeyoudi, the Minister of State for Foreign Trade of the United Arab Emirates, Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking IRENA for inviting me to the 11th session of the IRENA Assembly. The IRENA Assembly is always something that I think we all look forward to. I think the meetings are meetings that remind us of where we are on the energy landscape on the continent, in the world, and what we need to do better. So really, it is a pleasure to have the Economic Commission for Africa and the UN in general participating in these conversations. I am as well honored to be making the keynote opening remarks along with my colleague, who I hope will be here by the time I'm done, for this very important ministerial roundtable. It is a ministerial roundtable, and it is important because it is the ministers at the end of the day who make this important decision. So I'm hoping that as we begin 2021 with some glimmer of hope in the horizon, that the vaccine is here and that we can finally vaccinate all of ourselves and maybe begin to get COVID-19 under wraps a little bit, that we can begin to think about, what is the build forward? What is it that we need to do to continue charting the course ahead together in a way that is sustainable? We must create jobs, as we know. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only threatened our health, it has threatened our economies, it has threatened our jobs, it's taken away many jobs, and we need to figure out how to bring those jobs back. One of the most important ways of bringing those jobs back, of course, is working on the energy landscape, ensuring that energy as an enabler is adequately provided across the continent in particular. We are all now using these platforms of Zoom to talk. These platforms appear almost, what would I call them, innocuous, but they are huge, huge energy consumers. For all the conversations that we have on Zoom, for all the conversations that we are now having on our phones, we are using an incredible amount of electricity. And so we do need to ensure that we can actually make, many of us have heard, I need to close my screen because my bandwidth is not enough, I need to do this. And so I think that combination of the ICT and the technology development and the energy conversations can go hand in hand. And I think it's an amazing opportunity for us in this community of energy and sustainable energy advocates, that we've had this a little bit. Out of every tragedy comes some positives. Maybe as we do more ICT development, we can also begin to look at how we push the landscape on financing renewable energies in particular. I want to start by saying on the continent, of course, we haven't done that well. IRENA's Global Renewables Outlook estimates that the global energy transition will need renewable power capacity investment of about $22.5 trillion. It's huge. Clearly, if we invest this much in renewable energy, one, not only will we start building forward, but we will create a lot of jobs. Africa remains the least energized region, however, with only 250 gigawatts of installed electricity capacity compared to 7,100 gigawatts globally. So, 250 compared to 7,150, you do the math, we're still very, very far behind. We have almost 600 million people that out of the globally 750, 780 million people that lack electricity access. But I want to also use 2021 as the year where we do not only talk about the people that lack access, but more importantly about the industry that is not powered by enough energy, because we can power every home on the continent, but we will not deliver growth. And so I think, yes, it has been correct up until now to focus on just powering houses, individual houses, but actually to get to powering individual houses, we need to power industry, because only if industry thrives on our continent, only if industry can create jobs, can we then actually power houses who can actually pay their electricity bills. The big problem on the continent is that a lot of our utilities are not doing well. And so I really believe that the conversation on energy in Africa needs to move from a conversation on how many houses or how many individuals or how many rural communities do not have energy, to what is the energy that is needed to power an industrial base, a service base on the continent that works. The good news about that is that on the 1st of January this year, the African heads of states, the African business sector, the Africans all together came together to realize what was a 50-year-old dream, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, pulling together the continent to say, together we can grow, together we can trade, together we can do better in creating value and creating jobs. This African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement creates a one market Africa, eventually where we will have no more tariffs for moving goods across the continent. It will substantially reduce non-tariff barriers, which are the most important for you as businesses when you come into the continent, because it also works for energy trade on the continent. If the AFCFTA works, energy trade should be much better. Today's Africa's share of global installed electricity capacity, again, is only 7,100 gigawatts, which is 3.5% of the overall renewable share. Of all the investments that were done in renewable energy over the last 10 years, Africa only benefited 2% of that investment. So we do need to think of what is it that is holding back the continent from getting the investments. We keep talking about the fact that we don't have the energy, the households don't have the energy, our industry doesn't have the energy, but the investments are not coming. There has to be, I think, something that is stopping the demand and the supply of these markets to work. We also know that Africa is the last frontier in terms of new investments. We have a park of stranded assets, but not that much, because we still need to do the new investments. And that's the big opportunity on the continent. We still have an opportunity to just start and go directly into good renewable investment that we can do. A lot of African countries are committing to net zero by 2050. As we begin to prepare for the COP, we know that that's where we all want to go. And so we do need to begin to think about what is it that we need to do as a community. And I think Irena's leadership on this, the UN leadership on this, is going to be critical. What is it that we need to do as a community to unlock the investment in the energy sector on the continent? The Economic Commission for Africa just finished a report, which we hope we can share with you later, looking at the overall regulatory environment. Yes, it is about regulation. It is about ensuring that we have cost-reflective tariffs so that when businesses come, they know, one, that there is a stability in the regulatory environment, that the regulatory environment is going to stay the same throughout the investment period, that we are going to have the right cost-reflective tariffs that every individual can pay, and that you do not have changes in policy and pricing in between. And I think as we work with our countries, we need to continue to do that. The 5 countries on the continent that are getting the most investment in the energy sector today are countries that are doing this. South Africa, Kenya, Morocco, Egypt are countries that have managed to ensure that you have regulatory stability. There is nothing better than regulatory stability, regulatory certainty to ensure that you can attract investment. And I think that this is the message that we together would like to send to the African communities and the African populations. But even once you've gotten regulatory stability, you still need the financing. And I think looking at new and innovative ways of attracting financing, the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility. The Liquidity and Sustainability Facility is essentially a facility that we're asking that will lower the cost of resources to the continent, especially in an environment where we have a lot of low interest, negative interest rate borrowing in Japan, in Singapore, in the developed world, in the United States. We believe that with lower and cheaper access to financing, maybe we can do more. Today, energy investments in the continent are still expecting an 18% IRR. That is quite high. Can we bring some of that down to 10 to 12% and make it more manageable? Can we use some of our pension funds, our patient capital on the continent to blend with new investments that are coming in. But most importantly, what we're looking at as well is looking at, can we create African investors in the energy space? It may take very, very long to attract the best of European investment and US investment, but maybe not, because we just saw that DFC is investing about 5 billion in Africa, some of it in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Cote d'Ivoire. So there is, I think Africa is making that move to begin to change its investment environment. But to do that, I think sustainably and convincingly, we need Africans to invest in the energy sector in Africa. I think that only when Africans begin to invest more and heavily will we also be able to attract the rest of the world to come to us. And that's why, as the Economic Commission for Africa, we're also launching something called Team Energy Africa, which is pulling together all African energy developers to say, you know, let's bring them together, let them help us be also part of that voice that talks about governance, institutions, management of utilities, the ease of doing business and transparency in the energy sector. We believe that if we have core big African business talking about these issues, just as we have been talking about it, Francesco, and many others across the globe on the issues of governance in the energy sector, that maybe the leaders will also begin to look, because it will be African businesses sending those messages directly back to them. It will be jobs that we are creating. So I think that is the second big piece of the conversation. It's regulation first, and then it's financing. And finally, we must ensure that as we do that, we look at the last mile, we look at distribution. We've been working with the Rockefeller Foundation, looking at how it is that you can bring together, you know, distribution to rural communities. How is it that we can ensure that we leave no one behind? We believe that working with the Global Commission to End Energy Poverty, which is the Rockefeller Foundation initiative, Francesco and I are members of that. This work hopefully will unleash more investments in the distribution sector, the integrated distribution framework, which is the way that we're looking at that, hopefully will support the work that IRENA is doing, and that we can ensure as we move forward that we bring Africa together, we bring Africa into this debate on renewable energy in a profitable way for business, in a transparent way, in a way that builds our institutions much better, but most importantly, in a way that ensures that we can create jobs, build forward, and realize African Union Agenda 2063 and the United Nations Agenda 2030. That is why I'm so happy for ECA to be part of this conversation today, so that hopefully together we can work to see how we take this conversation forward and make it happen. Thanks once again for listening, and thanks for inviting me to this very, very important meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Songwi. Now we go back to His Excellency Dr. Thani Ahmed Al-Sejoudi to deliver his keynote address. Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you today at the IRENA's ministerial meeting on scaling up finance for renewables. I thank my friend, His Excellency Francesco La Camera, for inviting me. There's no question that renewables offer a viable path forward in meeting the growing energy demand while cutting on emissions and providing access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable power in the remotest area of the world. At this stage, increasing investment in renewable offers a valuable opportunity to align economic recovery with sustainable developments as well as climate change. However, IRENA announced that energy renewable investments reached $322 billion in 2018, with modest growth seen through 2019. This figure remains far below the levels needed to put the world on course for a climate-safe future. Meeting climate goals requires reallocation of capital toward low-carbon energy sources, and annual investments in renewables would have to nearly triple to $800 billion by 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, the UAE is the largest and fastest growing solar market in the region. We have long recognized the importance of diversifying our energy mix and made a commitment to increase the share of renewables to 44% by 2050. While the world witnessed a significant drop in renewable energy investments in 2020, the UAE remained on track and maintained the timeline of its renewable energy projects. We awarded the contract for 2 gigawatt solar plants in Abu Dhabi that will be the world's largest once completed. The winning bid for the project broke the world record for the lowest solar power generation cost at 0.35 US cents per kilowatt hour. We completed the financing for the 5th phase of the 5 gigawatt Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, and recently launched its 3rd phase. Once completed in 2030, the park will have production capacity of 5 gigawatt, making it the largest single-site solar park in the world, based on the Independence Power Producer IPP model. As these projects enter the operational phase, one by one, they will take the country's renewable power capacity to 8.4 gigawatts by 2030, a significant increase over its current capacity of 2.4 gigawatts. And our investments in renewable energy are not restricted within our borders. The UAE has long been committed to advancing the deployments of renewable energy solutions worldwide. To date, it has invested in renewable projects across 70 countries. Our flagship energy company, Masdar, alone contributed to projects with a total value of around 19.9 billion US dollar that have a gross capacity of 10.7 gigawatts, either installed or under development. Distinguished guests, with the support of IRENA, we believe that the world will make the switch to renewable energy and mobilize investments along this landscape. We truly have an opportunity to build back better, greener, and more resilient. However, a successful green recovery requires collective efforts from everyone and depends on continued cooperation of all stakeholders across all sectors. Only if we work together, we can achieve our ambitions. Let us welcome 2021 with a new hope and resolve, not only to defeat the global health crisis, but to turn this challenge into opportunity to come out of this crisis stronger than ever. With a positive outlook, we'll continue to reinforce the role of a green economy as a cornerstone of the developments, and we hope that our experience can serve as a source of inspirations for everyone. In closing, I wish you all a very productive participations in today's activities and look forward to hearing the insights of our esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now it is time for us to hand over to His Excellency, Mr. Gabriel Mijandria, to moderate the panel discussions with our distinguished guests. After the panel discussions, I will open the floor for interventions. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for those kind words of introduction. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Lima, and good afternoon and good evening wherever you are across the world. First of all, let me give you a message about the care we must continue having. At this very moment, I am in my last day of confinement after having tested positive to COVID-19 2 weeks ago. I had the luck to pass this without major symptoms, but that is not the case for many more. Please do keep taking care of yourselves and your loved ones. Our adequate behavior is the only long-lasting solution to the global challenge of the pandemic. Now, moving to the matter of our gathering, I want to thank Irina for the honor to be today moderating this important session on scaling up financing for renewables, in which we will learn about the opportunities and challenges the world faces to increase the flow of resources devoted to a most needed energy transition. In such regard, the scaling up of renewables is one of the most urgent priorities we have. We are at a critical moment in our efforts to turn the tide against catastrophic climate change, and do that, this must be the decade during which the shift to a net zero emission world takes hold and accelerates. Investments in renewables are going to be at the heart of this shift. Meeting international climate and development objectives will require a massive reallocation of capital towards low carbon technologies, especially renewables, something that made sense before, but has now become inevitable after COVID-19. Although the number required are staggering, different studies, including by IRENA, help us to understand the scale of the need. Clean electricity generation capacity must grow by several multiples by 2050. We need renewable energy capacity additions in hundreds of gigawatts every year, an investment in the order of trillions of dollars. To get these gigawatts built, we will need to mobilize the private sector. This is especially important in the current context, with government budgets particularly hit in the developing world and emerging markets. Mobilizing the private sector is crucial for delivering the energy transition to simultaneously recharge the economic recovery and battle climate change. But there is good news. Renewable energy is now affordable, above all because of the extraordinary revolution in the cost of wind and solar power, which makes renewables cheaper than any other source of electricity in many countries already. For instance, the electrification of a critical biome as the Amazon needs to be thought under the renewable energy approach. The only option to ensure development is sustainable in the long term. This is why we must see investment in renewables not only as a question of environmental concerns, but as a competitive economic opportunity. Renewables can now be seen as a financial opportunity that perfectly matches our sustainability concerns. Renewables are the fastest and lowest risk way to add new capacity. The price is stable, they do not pollute the air, they do not use any water, they add energy security, and also, something important in this current context, they create green jobs. Despite the good news and despite this opportunity, generation of electricity remains overwhelmingly reliant on carbon-intensive sources. Moreover, the economic crisis has actually slowed down the growth of renewables. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, renewable energy investments dropped by 34% in the first half of 2020. We therefore need to work towards accelerating the transition and scaling up financing in renewables. We need to see a shift in the scale of ambition toward projects of hundreds of megawatts, an investment in infrastructure that can absorb these gigawatts, stronger and smarter grids, and flexible technologies such as storage. In this context, I am delighted to be able to moderate a panel of very distinguished speakers. Together, these 16 speakers represent the full spectrum of stakeholders that need to work together to scale up renewables: government, central banks, financial institutions, industry, and development institutions. I would like to hear from them on what they are doing to scale up renewable energy, to hear their priorities and the challenges that they see lying ahead. Now, a call to our panelists. Given the long list we have today, I will ask all of them to try to stick to the 4 minutes limit in your participation for us to be able to hear everyone. After saying that, I would like to start by inviting our first panelist, His Excellency, Mr. Mohamed Maït, the Minister of Finance in Egypt. Minister, the government of Egypt has recently set targets for renewable to make up to 42% of the country's electricity mix by 2035, based on rapid solar and wind deployment. We are excited to know more about how you are planning to achieve these targets, given the huge success that Egypt has managed to achieve in the previous years. Minister, the floor is yours. Minister Maït? Okay.
I think the Deputy Minister of Finance, if I may, of Egypt is on the line, but somebody may need to open her mic for her. Minister Shireen is there from Egypt.
Okay. Can our technical team can help us with that?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Very good, very good. I would like to relay the apology of Dr. Maid because he was called into a quick meeting, so I'm attending on his behalf. And thank you for the invitation. Shall I get started addressing your point? Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity and my highest regards and appreciation for the role played by IRENA, Your Excellencies and the esteemed Assembly of IRENA. I would just like to talk about all the efforts that have been done by the government of Egypt lately in order to allow us to accommodate the needed financing. This is an ongoing effort that we are doing, and it takes a lot of efforts in order to enable the needed infrastructure. The government of Egypt has already instilled public-private partnership law, and we have also allowed for the bidding of different investors in order to make a lot of wind and photovoltaic and solar energy projects. As you have mentioned, we are targeting to have renewable energy constituting about 42% of our power generation in 2040. We have already financed many projects. So we have about 3,165 megawatt of projects, among them wind and solar energy, and we have in the pipeline projects totaling 700 megawatts. For those, we also allowed the possibility that sovereign guarantees are issued in order to guarantee the tariff payment of those investors. And we have also moved on to a next step where we have enabled projects based on a feed-in tariff program where we determined the tariff that will be provided. So we started with competitive bidding from investors. We moved into feed-in tariff, and we are continuously improving on the methodology that we accept investors coming and bidding for those power projects. We have also done the first green bond in Egypt and in the Middle East and Africa for 750 megawatt back in 2020. We thought the time is very useful, and against this 750 million US dollars which were issued, we had projects totaling about 2 billion US dollars among different portfolio of eligible green projects, including renewable energy 16%, clean transportation 19%, 26% for the funding of sustainable water and wastewater management, as well as 39% for the pollution and prevention. So we started on the green bond, and it was a great success, subscribed many times over the amount. And I don't want to, exceed the timing that is allocated for us, but we are very happy on working on renewable energy, doing what we can in order to support. And naturally, the experience develops and takes time. So in addition to the regulatory environment, one of the challenges is also building on the experience and building on the momentum and having the experience of negotiating with the investors and getting the best deal for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's move to our second panelist, Her Excellency Engineer Halasawati, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Jordan. Mr. Sawati, your country is a frontrunner in the MENA region in terms of the pace and the scale with which it has developed renewable energy, especially in the power sector. Renewables accounted for around 13% of total energy generated in 2019, up from a near zero share in 2012. Could Your Excellency please share with the participants how Jordan managed to achieve that and what else Jordan is planning for the years to come for the transition toward a more sustainable energy mix?
Thank you, and thank you, Irina, for this invitation and for arranging for this panel. I also want to thank Irina for the climate investment platform, and I hope Jordan will be able to benefit from it very soon, as well as most of the other countries. It sure is a very important initiative, and I hope and I will work on capitalizing on that. I'm so proud that His Excellency spoke of Jordan as a front runner in the MENA region in terms of pace and scale with which we deployed renewable energy. And this by itself had reasons. As His Excellency said, from a near zero in 2012 to around 20% in 2020, and that was really quick. I would say the most important things for us were the will to go for sustainable energy, the need, as Jordan used to import almost all of its energy from outside of Jordan. So for the first time, it was for us kind of an energy resource that is produced locally here in Jordan. The legislative framework was very important, and it was mentioned before. And after the legislative framework, the financing facilities were very important. And here I'd like to thank the international funding organizations who cooperated with Jordan in this regard, not only by availing the funding for the mega projects that happened in Jordan, but also we benefited a lot from their experience in implementing such projects. And this is really important for any country, especially if the country is getting into renewables, like either for the first time or incorporating mega projects which require PPAs that are to be thought of very carefully. As well, the cooperation of the private sector, and I would say the appetite of the private sector here in Jordan also had a role to play in getting us where we are today. The harmony between private and public sector was also very important for us. And today, by the way, after say 6 years of starting dealing with renewable energy, the investments in renewable energy in Jordan is approximately $4 billion. In addition to that, we as Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources representing the government, we tried also to reach small consumers. We tried to reach productive sectors. So it's not just that we are targeting mega projects, but also small projects. And we have an initiative which we call JREEF, the Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund, by which we were able to fund small consumers in order to move towards energy efficiency and renewable energy. And we were able to help thousands of farmers, households, hospitals, schools, in order to go for renewable energy and energy efficiency by partly funding their projects. And I think it is a successful initiative, and we would be happy to share this success story with other countries, because I really think that it helped us move forward. Another initiative which we've started last year, because we believe that benefiting from the sun to generate a household electricity should not only help the rich who can afford these systems, but actually it should help the poor who are most needy to reduce their monthly bills. And now we're moving into installing solar systems to generate electricity for poor households. We've already installed around 6,000 systems, and we want to install 5,000 systems per year. So mainly, if you ask me what made that happen, and by the way, today we have over 2,000 megawatt of installed renewable energy feeding our grid. Finally, we are targeting, we're moving towards 2030, and our strategy has it clear that we will reach around 31% of our energy to be produced, or electrical energy to be produced from renewable energy. Again, I would like to thank you for this opportunity and wish all the best for all the panelists, and it would be great to also hear from your experiences, and I'm sure we in Jordan will be able to benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Sawati, for the inspiring story on Jordan's success in deploying renewables. As Dr. Songwe stated, we need to move together in the deployment of renewables, not only to households, but also to industry, to make a clear change in the way we behave, and to ensure that we are able to fight climate change. Thank you very much. Now, let's jump to Europe for some time. His Excellency Mr. Claude Turmes is the Minister of Energy of Luxembourg. Minister, Luxembourg is a unique landlocked country with low cost of energy and the high purchasing power of its consumers. These two factors appear in some analysis to be limiting the interest to invest in renewables energy and energy efficiency. How are you aiming to surpass these challenges? Minister, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and my greetings to Dr. Tani. Unfortunately, this year we are not in beautiful Abu Dhabi, but hopefully next January. Francesco, dear Director General, I think it's completely impressive what IRENA has achieved over the last years, and I think all those who have contributed should be proud of that. So Luxembourg is a small part of Europe. Our power system, or our energy system, is de facto a continental one. And as Dr. Songre has rightly mentioned before, why has Europe be able to go very quick in renewables? First is regulatory stability. We have very sophisticated, stable laws. Second is we have our grid, electricity grid, beyond the borders, so that sun in one part of Europe can be balanced by wind onshore in another part. And then we have our joker, which is offshore wind, which will be really much bigger in the next week. And Luxembourg, even as a landlocked countries, will invest with Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, and others also in this offshore wind. Recently, Europe has really boosted its ambition. We went on climate change from 40% to 55% reduction in 2030. That is now Paris compatible, and that means that 38 to 40% of all our energy will come from renewables. And when it comes to electricity, 60 to 65% of all electricity in Europe in 2030 will be solar, wind, onshore wind, offshore, hydro, or some biomass. As I mentioned, offshore wind will be extremely spectacular now in volume. And then we have a new moment also. We are now electrifying transport massively, which means that we have mega batteries coming in, but also electrolyzers for green hydrogen. And that will, of course, help us to balance the system. Maybe back to Luxembourg. So we are less than 1 million. We are doing our homework on solar, on onshore wind. But Luxembourg is a small country, but is one of the world's biggest in places for finance for investments. We have in Luxembourg the world's biggest in volume public bank, which is European Investment Bank. More than half, if not 2/3 of all offshore wind in Europe has been got lending from the European Investment Bank, and European Investment Bank will now, with its new strategy, even be more prominent also at the international level. And in Luxembourg, we have the biggest exchange in the world for green bonds. So what I want to do with the help of my finance minister is that we continue to be a place for issuing green bonds, and that we work, especially maybe with African countries, but also beyond, on de-risking instruments. The beauty of renewable is now we are cheap. So we can develop sophisticated financial instruments to lower the interest rates which penalize, for example, large-scale renewable investments in Africa. And my wish is that Luxembourg, Europe, that we basically go much faster into de-risking, and not only de-risking for public off-takers, but I see a huge potential for what you as chairman mentioned. Now it's about renewables in industry, so we can and we should de-risk private to private projects. So big solar, big wind, feeding immediately into industry, and maybe that Europe and Luxembourg can help to de-risk so that that comes with cheaper financial finance. So that's a bit my wish. And I think we are really, we have a good speed worldwide on renewables. Francesco, be proud of our great organization.
Thank you, Minister Terms. Great, you brought to the table the regulatory issues. Sometimes there are discussions around technicalities or engineering issues regarding renewables, and we forget that a regulatory framework is as important as the technical issues. And happy to hear from Luxembourg that these are good investments, because if Luxembourg knows something about investment, well, you know a lot. So if you say so, then it must be a good business. Thank you very much, Minister. Now let's turn to to Algeria. Professor Chemseddine Chittoul is the Algerian Minister of Energy and Renewable Energies, of Energy Transition and Renewable Energy. And Algeria has set a goal of producing at least 22 gigawatts of power from renewable resources to 2030, included at least 13.6 gigawatts from photovoltaic solar. Could Your Excellency please kindly share with us Algeria's roadmap and strategy to achieve those goals? Professor, the floor is yours.
Merci à vous. Tout d'abord, bonjour. Je vous remercie de m'accueillir dans ce panel de haut niveau. En fait, le ministère de la Transition énergétique, qui est né à peine 6 mois, a décidé donc de mettre une feuille de route qui devrait, en principe, nous faire sortir graduellement des énergies fossiles pour aller vers des énergies renouvelables en utilisant d'une façon rationnelle les énergies, aussi bien fossiles que renouvelables, mais que je vous rassure tout de suite, le plan actuellement, nous sommes à peu près à 700 mégawatts uniquement.
We are at 700 megawatts of solar energy only at the moment, and that's the equivalent of 5% of our capacity. So we have to be realistic. In March 2020, our government, before we set up the ministry, which was set up in June, the government then had opted for something more realistic, 1,000 megawatts from here to 2035. So in that framework, we hope to add 1,000 megawatts per year. We are adopting and establishing flexible energy models, which will allow us to take into account of external circumstances and therefore is flexible and can be adapted. I am a citizen of the world too, as are you. IRENA is very well led by RDG, and we would like IRENA to be as ambitious as it can possibly be. There are so many problems, for instance, in Africa with climate change and the impact of climate change. And it means that continents such as that, heavily impacted by climate change, really are incurring a great delay. Climate change is not the responsibility of the countries of the South. It is a worldwide responsibility. We are all responsible for it. So I think that IRENA has to be even more ambitious when it comes to renewables. At the moment, the figure is 35%. Perhaps it could take it further and put its foot on the accelerator to try and eliminate fossil fuels. Fossil fuels should remain underground in order to respect the climate agreement. Now to come back to Algeria. You know, we have 2,400,000 square kilometers by way of a surface area, lots of solar energy, 3,000 per square kilometers per year. So we have to be as ambitious as possible. We also have the Sahara Desert on our territory. We need energy plans for buildings and for industry in general, for all sorts of sectors. And we are being realistic in so doing. From 2030, of course, we have something that we need to achieve, but every year we hope to convert many vehicles too to electricity. And apart from that, then we also want, as I mentioned before, to look at the building sector, which is a major challenge. We are acting in other areas too in parallel fashion. We are taking action too in the more rural areas, not only in urban areas. And we want to take care of our entire population. Of course, energy carries a cost. So we have to look at our subsidy policy too, in order to make sure that as many people as possible have access, especially those in rural areas. We need special programs perhaps for them. So we have a series of options. And this plan to install the megawatts I mentioned earlier, which kicks off this year, will be achieved, I hope. We're looking for partners, of course, and we're trying to act as transparently as possible. The some kilowatts of energy, of course, are more expensive than others, and solar kilowatts, of course. We're looking at green hydrogen too. And we need partners. We need to work together with reliable partners. We're looking for these in the European Union. We have gas pipelines, for instance, too, which can be used to transport natural gas and green hydrogen. I would like to thank those that have organized this very excellent conference. Algeria is back, and we hope to be able to contribute as fully as possible to the work of IRENA. Climate change is something which affects countries in the north and the south of the globe, but the impact is greater in the countries of the south. We've drawn up a white paper which highlights everything I've mentioned in further detail and our plans for the future, and what we can do to mitigate the impact of climate change here in Algeria and worldwide. So I hope that we can all work together to achieve that. Algeria is available. We are here to lend you our help and support in all this. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Professor. Thank you very much for reminding us the eagerness of the countries to work with IRENA and to get help from IRENA in order to advance in their energy transitions. Thank you very much for that. Now, let's move to one of the current most attractive markets for renewables in the world, India. Mr. Dinesh Jagdale is the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy of India. Secretary,
thank you.
India is regularly attracting diverse investments in renewable and have pushed also for international initiatives as the International Solar Alliance. Please enlighten us with what steps India did right in creating a vibrant ecosystem of developing and financing renewables. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellency. Good evening. Good evening to all the esteemed delegates and the participants, panelists joining this very important session on scaling of finance for renewables, and a very good day to all the other members from across the globe. Your Excellency, India is committed to contributing to global efforts to fight climate change and also adopting a sustainable development path. Increasing the share of renewable energy in our energy mix is central to our plans to meet the above commitments and ensure sustainability of our development process. We have set very ambitious targets for ourselves for the RE capacity. Our near-term goal is to have installed RE capacity of 175 gigawatt by the year 2022, and then increase it to 450 gigawatt as we reach 2030. India's achievement in the last couple of years, almost 6 years if you see, it has been very impressive. Our RE installed capacity has increased 2.5 times in this period, while our solar installed capacity has increased 13 times in the same duration. Today, our RE capacity is about 24%, and this does not include large hydro. And in terms of energy mix, the RE contributes about 12% of the total electricity produced in the country. As of December of 2020, renewable energy installed capacity in India has already reached 91 gigawatts, and around 50 gigawatt capacities under installation at various stages. Excellency, most of our capacity additions come through procurement by central agencies who then sell the procured power to DISCOMs. India has emerged as the most attractive destination for renewables in the world, and the total investment in the past 5 years has been over $64 billion. We took a number of proactive steps to build an investor-friendly policy regime. Few of those are: one is to permit foreign direct investment up to 100% under the automatic route. We established model power purchase agreements, contracts, and standard bidding documents, which gave us ease of doing business. We established a robust payment security mechanism. We set up large ultra mega RE parks, which then provided on a plug and play model to the investors and the developers. We waived the interstate transmission charges, which helped the transmission of electricity from one state to other. We set up a long-term trajectory of renewable purchase obligation, which gave a mandatory requirement to buy the renewable energy power by the different states. We established green energy corridor for evacuation of power. And then there were several schemes, including the solarization of farm sector, the agriculture pumps, the rooftop, and such schemes which paved a large way for RE penetration. What did these do is actually paved the way for several global funds who have either entered the sector or are in the advanced stage of discussion regarding investments. Several steps in the energy space are further being taken, and a clear roadmap for upcoming areas, including storage, grid augmentation to absorb the increasing share of renewables, offshore wind energy resources, and obviously green hydrogen are being worked out. For the energy transition to be successful, affordability and environmental compatibility need to combine with innovative and smart climate action. Achieving a multifold increase in capacity over the next decade will require the rollout of renewable energy technologies across all sectors, whether it's power, buildings, industry, agriculture, transport, under both the centralized as well as the decentralized energy models. What we feel, Excellency, is that countries now need is the availability of local capital to finance renewables, which is going to play a crucial role in driving down financing costs and helping to build bankable projects. And as we see as the market expands, there is need to develop refinancing models that can expand the investor base for RE assets and free up project capital for development of new projects. Mobilizing both domestic and foreign resources of capital, particularly among investors, institutional investors, is needed to fill the financing gap. All countries need to look at different de-risking instruments, transaction enablers, and innovative financial structures that will unlock finance for investment into RE projects. What we feel is that governments need to differentiate between mature technologies and the technologies that are growing or that are promising to grow, which would then need handholding for a finite time till they go into maturity mode from a finance perspective. Excellency, investor dialogues are key to matchmaking, bring in matchmaking opportunities and multi-stakeholder dialogues with domestic and foreign institutional investors to help unlocking finance. We believe IRENA can play a very important role in these aspects, and we look forward to work with IRENA closely to build and scale up the financing world to move towards RE. Thank you, Very Excellency, for patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary, and thank you for reminding us the importance of local finance institutions and local finance flows in terms of getting up to speed the transition to renewable energies. Thank you very much. And showing us that renewables are no longer a luxury for developed countries. They work for developing countries, and they are absolutely needed for us in this new scenario, the post-COVID-19 and the climate change scenario that we are facing. Thank you very much. Now let's move to another female panelist. I'm happy to welcome Mrs. Marjeta Jagger. She's the Deputy General Director of International Cooperation and Development at the European Commission. The European Commission, Mrs. Jagger, has long supported the work of IRENA and has been engaged in supported development of the REMAP study, for instance, that identifies cost-effective renewable energy options for all EU member states, spanning a wide range of sectors and technologies. Please share with us your 2021 strategy for supporting renewables in view of the new Green Deals.
Mm-hmm. Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, I'm honored to participate in this ministerial roundtable, and I would really like to thank IRENA and chairs of the Assembly, Costa Rica and Spain, for the invitation to speak. I would also like to congratulate you, dear Francesca, for all the achievements of IRENA for the last years, and thank you also for recognizing the major role of the EU and the member states as a contributor of development assistance and climate finance. As we all know, the COVID-19 has hit hard, and as we seek to recover from this crisis, we must take the opportunity to make recovery better and greener. And for this sector, it means that we need to accelerate global energy access and the global transition toward an energy based on energy produced from the resources, from the renewable resources. And you just said the strategy is extremely important. And in European Union, the Green Deal is a priority. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, also our recovery strategy. The Green Deal is a transformative and inclusive agenda combining policies and investments. So renewable energy and technologies are at the heart of this transformation. And to bring it about, we will intensify really the contacts with our international partners and engagement with international organizations such as IRENA, private sector, financing institutions, academia, and the civil society. And our budget for the next 7 years, together with the recovery plan and New Generation EU, are designed to transform Europe into the greener, resource efficient, inclusive, and competitive economy. And as Claude Turmes, old friend and the Chair Minister, is saying, we are leading the way by adopting ambitious commitments and groundbreaking energy and climate frameworks. We really believe in the EU that protecting nature and achieving sustainable growth can be done simultaneously, and we are determined to inspire others to do the same and also to support them. So we are ready to share our experience so we can all benefit from the green transformation. As mentioned before, under the previous MFF, we have put 3.7 billion euros to sustainable energy cooperation for development. And we are really pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to have delivered the concrete results. 13.2 gigawatts in new renewable capacity, 20 million more people gaining energy access, and 28 million tons of CO2 emissions avoided on the yearly basis. But we have also understood the need to mobilize the private investments, so especially in Africa. And the EU external investment plan with the EFSD guarantee was set to do this, and it gave a strong focus on sustainable energy. We made additionally available almost 300 million euros in the form of guarantees with an expected leverage of 10 times of that amount by reducing risk and unlocking sustainable energy investments. And to reassure Vera, we intend to do even better with its successor instruments, the EFSD+. Because one thing is very clear, business as usual in the form of traditional development assistance will not be enough to meet the increasing energy demand. So to overcome the COVID-19 crisis and to address the climate emergency. So we are raising our ambitions in the development funding by allocating at least 30% of available funding to this action for the next MFF. And the ambition will be supported by really seeing sustainable energy to remain at the heart of our development cooperation and programming, and also in our joint action with member states as a Team Europe. We are looking forward to working with you to deliver this energy transformation by building back better and greener for our societies and economic prosperity. So we are looking forward to continue our cooperation with Irena, and all the success to all of you and a lot of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Jagger. Thank you very much for your statement. Now let's move back to MENA. Mr. Mohamed Jamil Al-Ramahi is the Chief Executive Officer of Masdar. Masdar, also known as the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company. In January 2019, Masdar announced plans to double its renewable energy capacity from 4 gigawatts in 5 years with new projects in Asia and the Americas. Please, Mr. Al-Ramahi, tell us about your latest initiatives in developing countries. The floor is yours. Sorry, you're mute. We're not hearing you. No?
Now is good?
Now we can hear you.
Perfect. I was saying, Minister Gabriel, thank you for moderating this session. And Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum from Masdar City here in Abu Dhabi. To my dear friend Francisco Lacamara, Director General of IRENA, and to all the IRENA team members, congratulations for another successful event, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. The IRENA General Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, has always been a fundamental part of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, and I am pleased to see the Assembly take place once again, even if it's virtual. Masdar, like you said, Your Excellency, in the introduction, is also known as Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, was established in 2006 to invest and advance the development of sustainable solutions, focusing on clean energy and sustainable urban development. Since the beginning, Masdar has been supporting the United Arab Emirates with its energy strategy to increase clean energy to 50% of the total energy mix and reduce the carbon footprint of the power sector by around 70% by 2050. And I will give you just a few examples. Our 100 megawatt concentrated solar power plant, what we call Shams 1, is still one of the largest CSP plants in the world. And late last year, just before the end of 2020, a partnership of local and international partners, including us, closed the financing of the world's largest single-site solar PV plant, the 2 gigawatt Al-Dhafra project here in Abu Dhabi. Of course, we did not stop there. By going beyond our borders, we have scaled up our investments across the whole renewable spectrum, including not just solar, but onshore and offshore wind, waste to energy, and others. We are now present in more than 30 countries, investing or committing to invest in projects with a combined value of $20 billion and generation capacity close to 11 gigawatt. Our priorities in 2021, therefore, will be doubling down on renewable investments in our existing geographies, as well as exploring into new markets with the right partners. In addition, we will be building on our experience from Masdar City, our sustainable urban development, which of course hosts the headquarters of the International Renewable Energy Agency, to explore opportunities in sustainable real estate, mobility solution, storage, digitalization, and smart infrastructure. Now, to achieve this, we will continue to collaborate with partners from around the world. Now, let's talk a little bit about the challenges we face in scaling renewables. First, I would like to start with the good news. There is no lack of funding for infrastructure projects, especially green infrastructure. The real question is the funding flowing to where it is needed the most. Infrastructure, and therefore renewable energy, needs well-defined policy regimes, a regulatory environment that is unwelcoming to foreign investment, and policies that change unpredictably, make long-term investment challenging. Furthermore, power purchase agreements need to be bankable with credit-worthy counterparties. This results in more competitive financing and lower power tariffs. Finally, grid infrastructure requires investment to become more robust. These challenges remain in many emerging countries. So what we need to be doing? At the policy level, clear renewable energy targets should be set by governments and reinforced by legislations. Market transparency and liberalization would ease the burden of 7 governments through public-private partnership and corporate offtake contracts. Bureaucracy needs to be cut through top-down legislation, and sustainable finance solutions need to be further developed. By supporting governments to cut red tape and make financing more accessible, IRENA is already making a huge impact. For example, IRENA recently launched climate investment platform promoting the transparency and market mechanism required. So of course, the World Bank Scaling Solar Program, which Masdar is part of. We therefore have an opportunity to build on initiatives like these and to bring together regulators, development, financial institutions, and commercial lenders, power off-takers, and equity investors to mitigate the funding shortfalls and ensure the path to a sustainable future remains intact. I thank you for the opportunity, and I wish all of you best of health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Ramahi. Thank you very much for sharing with us the experience of Masdar, an institution that I think could be very, very potent in terms of showing how can we develop a specific renewable policy for dry lands, for a kind of ecosystem that is present in most of developing countries, in many developing countries that need to find solutions that are affordable and that are fitted to our ecosystem opportunities, our ecosystem conditions, as the one you have in the United Arab Emirates. Thank you very much. We have heard a good number of policy examples. Now let's move and hear from our colleagues of the finance sector and multilateral agencies. First of all, Dr. Csaba Kondra is the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Hungary. In 2020, the Central Bank of Hungary became Europe's first central bank to prefer green lending by offering favorable treatment for energy-efficient housing loans. Please, Dr. Kondra, please tell us about the results of last year's inaugural green bond offering. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to address this assembly representing not only Hungary, but also the global community of central banks and financial regulators. Central banks have been traditionally more common participants in discussions about interest rates or GDP figures, but so far have been less so involved in debates about renewable energy. However, several central banks have recently recognized the importance of climate change as a megatrend likely to undermine long-term economic growth and stability. The Central Bank of Hungary deliberately intends to be a pioneer in this field and have therefore kept the issue of climate change and environmental sustainability high on our agenda despite the COVID outbreak. We strongly believe that central banks have a responsibility in relation to climate change and thus going one step further, even have a role in shaping the renewable energy landscape. Therefore, I'm especially grateful for the invitation to IRENA. We believe central banks can have an important role in the financial scale-up. such role is necessary, mostly indirect. The main actors in this mission are commercial and development banks, capital markets, and the financial services industry as a whole. Putting it simply, the job of the central bank is to create the most favorable environment possible for green financing, among which the financing of renewable energies. The question is, how can we nudge banks to allocate a higher share of their balance sheet to green assets such as renewables? There are multiple ways to do this. One is adjusting incentive structure. On one hand, by lowering the cost of capital for green assets through capital requirement regulation. At the end of last year, the Central Bank of Hungary introduced preferential capital requirements for loans financing renewable energy projects in Hungary. The capital discount is designed to boost credit supply and lower the cost of financing for this asset class. On the other hand, financiers must be aware of the consequences of not embarking on the green transition. As set out in our recent draft guide, the Central Bank of Hungary expects banks to understand and mitigate climate-related and environmental risks of their lending. When deciding whether to finance, for instance, a power producer company, banks will need to increasingly consider whether the business of that firm is sustainable. Phasing in renewables and phasing out polluting industries is an excellent mitigation measure of climate risks. In other words, to enhance financial stability. For all this to work, there are, however, some crucial prerequisites, as central banks cannot act in isolations. To briefly describe the Hungarian example, last year, we asked local commercial banks what they see as the most important factor in scaling up financing to renewables. The overarching answer was that credible, predictable, and effective public policy coupled with public investment that enable project development is needed. Very often, the main constraint for scaling up financing for renewables is not on the supply side, but rather on the demand side. In simple terms, many more good projects are needed. On one of the key dilemmas is how to create a stable and predictable policy framework while still fostering competition. It is certainly not a simple task, but it is essential to further lower risks of green financing. In other instances, public investment in infrastructure such as grids and storage in the binding constraint. We believe that if the prerequisites of optimal public policy and infrastructure are fulfilled, demand for financing renewables will also help to create its supply. That is also when central banks' creative policies can be most effective to make sure that the financial system is contributing to the sustainable energy transition. Let me finish by adding that IRENA is doing an excellent job on these fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Conrad. And let's welcome the central banks in the ship of the renewables. Let's welcome them on board. Thank you very much for all this work you're doing in Hungary. Central banks are central for the construction of public goods, such as macroeconomic stability, for instance. It is important that they help to build a new public good, environmental sustainability, and to understand that the construction of this public good is good business as well. It's good business for the private and it's good business for the country, That is something that it's very, very powerful in terms of generating this new scenario for us to develop in the world. Thank you very much again. Now let's move to one of my fellows panelists that speak the same language as me, Mr. José Luis Curbelo Ranero. He's the chairman and chief executive officer of the state-owned Spanish development agency, COFIDES. Dear José Luis, if you allow me, as part of its partnership with IRENA and its climate investment platform, COFIDES has agreed to provide concessional loans to eligible small and medium-scale off-grid projects across countries in sub-Saharan Africa, sourced from the IRENA's climate investment platform pool of projects. Could you explain more to the session the targets that COFIDES is aiming to achieve in the coming? Adelante, por favor, José Luis.
Gracias, Ministro Gabriel Quijandria.
Thank you very much, Minister Quijandria.
I know what you are talking about because I just overcame it 1 month ago and was not an easy experience. I would like also to congratulate everybody participating in this panel, distinguished group of panelists that will enlighten us about possibilities of cooperation and also to know what programs are being developed around. COFIDES is Spain's development finance institution, and we support projects in developing countries under two main vectors. One is trying to promote the internationalization of Spanish companies on the one hand, and on the other, trying to promote the development of our partner countries. COFIDES is also the only accredited institution to the Green Climate Fund. Before me, some of the panelists have talked about the risking. And I would like to mention, as you mentioned, Gabriel, I would like to mention the program that we just got approved by the European Commission. Margetta was the leading person on the European side. It was a program on renewable energy in sub-Saharan Africa to promote sustainable energy in off-grid sustainable energy in rural and peripheral, peri-urban areas of sub-Saharan Africa. This is a program of guarantees in which the European Commission contributes guarantees to financing of the private sector and the financing of the development institutions of Spain. We have been working closely with IRENA in the sense that we wanted this program not being a program linked to the Spanish investment, but being open to whatever investor would like to invest in sub-Saharan Africa. Was important for us to have a marketplace to gather projects that could be financed with these resources. So we collaborated with IRENA so that through their platform of marketplace platform, we were able to identify opportunities of investment. At the end, we are now working with around 20 shortlisted projects that will be developed and selected, a few projects that will be financed in the next few weeks. The important thing of the project for us is that the project has been a project that was to test the waters about the willingness of the private investors to invest in off-grid electrification in rural and peri-urban areas. We hope that the project is successful. We will enlarge within the framework of the EFSD Plus of the European Commission for the next few years to develop a bigger type of project that will be not only a pilot initiative, but will be a much bigger initiative to provide electrification in peripheral urban areas and rural areas. So for us IRENA has been very instrumental for us for the development of the project. and we will expect to collaborate in the near future with ARENA in the next phase of our project in the region. Thank you very much to everybody, and thank you very much to Irina for their collaboration with us.
Thank you, Jose Luis, for your statement. Let me tell you that your Peruvian cousin, I know maybe you know them, Corporación Financiera de Desarrollo, COFIDE without the S, has also entered strongly in the renewables world. So that is good news for us, and they're helping us, the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Energy and Mines, to push hardly for renewable transition here in Peru. Thank you very much, very much for that. And happy to hear you were able to overcome COVID-19 as well.
Yes.
Thank you. That's good news.
Thank you.
Now let's move to Asia. Dr. Joachim von Amsberg is the Vice President of Policy and Strategy at the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank. Dr. von Amsberg, the AIIB is one of the newest multilateral lenders and expanding its membership progressively. You made a very strong start in the last few years with a slew of co-financing and lending through other financial institutions. But how is your renewable energy financing strategy evolving this year and beyond? Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests. Greetings from East Asia, where it's close to midnight, but the renewable energy agenda is certainly an agenda worth staying up for through the night. It's a real pleasure for me to represent the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank at your assembly at this virtual ministerial meeting to discuss the crucial topic: how can we rapidly scale up investment in renewables in developing countries to help us deliver the zero carbon future in the next 30 to 40 years. Let me emphasize and start out by saying that we are actually meeting at a moment of great opportunity. The recent announcements from the world's two largest economies are in fact true game changers for the renewable energy agenda. These two largest economies are changing or accelerating their pace toward carbon neutrality and renewable energy. I think this will generate incredibly important momentum worldwide for the agenda that we're discussing here tonight. According to IRENA's transforming energy scenario, to meet the Paris Agreement targets, we would need global cumulative investments in renewables from 2016 to 2050 of about $27 trillion, complemented by respective investments in electrification and infrastructure to enable this transformation. $27 trillion, even in this time where we are flooded with announcements of trillion-dollar investment programs, this is an incredibly large amount of money and a very significant challenge. So for us at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, we are a multilateral development bank whose mission is financing the infrastructure for tomorrow. Infrastructure for tomorrow is infrastructure that is sustainability, infrastructure that has sustainability at its core. AIIB opened its doors just 5 years ago, just a few weeks after the Paris Agreement came into being. And so the Paris Agreement was really written into our DNA. AIIB has since then grown to 103 approved member countries worldwide, including members not only in Asia and Europe, but also Africa and the Americas. Now, working with partners, AIIB meets clients' needs by unlocking new capital sources and investing in infrastructure that is green, technology-enabled, and promotes regional connectivity. In the energy sector, we are supporting our member countries and the private sector to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon energy mix through investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and by reducing the carbon intensity of fossil fuel energy supplies. In just 5 years of our existence, the AIIB has invested a total of $1 billion in renewable energy projects, and about 90% of our total power capacity financed by the bank is in renewable energy. We have financed some very visible milestone renewable energy projects across Asia and Africa, many of them in cooperation with other multilateral development banks. For example, we heard from the Deputy Minister about the solar program in Egypt. There we provided financing for 11 solar projects in the Benban Solar Park, one of the largest solar farms in the world. We financed the largest wind farm in Central Asia and Kazakhstan. We invested in hydropower in Nepal, one of the largest private investments in the energy sector in the country to date. We financed the largest solar farm in Oman with 500 megawatts of installed capacity, which uses latest technology on tracking and bifacial technology. Now, despite a growing pipeline of renewable energy projects and increasing market demand, we do see challenges, and some of them have been touched on by previous speakers, in particular on government regulation and the need to mitigate risks in projects. These challenges need to be addressed by governments, multilateral development banks, and the private sector through better policies, innovative financing tools, and regional cooperation. Some countries, for example, and some utilities are experiencing, and that will only deteriorate following the COVID crisis, debt distress and suffer from very small fiscal space, which means that governments are struggling to deliver the investments that are needed. In particular, in low-income countries, lack of sufficient funding for the development of bankable renewable energy projects to the scale needed is an issue. So fundamental elements that can be addressed by governments are setting clear and long-term renewable energy targets, establishing strategies and action plans to place, creating a level playing field in energy pricing, fostering engagement at both central and local level, and supporting innovation and reducing the cost of financing. Public finance can also play an enabling role by bearing risk and in catalyzing action, but it cannot fund the transition alone. The trillions of investments that are required can only be achieved through considerable private sector mobilization. Multilateral development banks like the AIIB can play an important role to finance high-quality projects which are financially sustainable and can help reduce the risk for private co-investors. To ensure a greater number of bankable projects in low-income countries, AIIB has established a project preparation special fund and partners with concessional finance providers to support governments in the design and development of renewable energy projects, including technical design and environmental impact assessment. To conclude, AIIB as a new multilateral development bank relies on the collaboration with other MDBs, on partnership with leading international organizations such as IRENA, and to enhance our efforts in financing renewable energy, we are working with IRENA under the Climate Investment Platform to tap into a wider number of renewable energy projects and develop bankable projects. We are very keen and we're looking forward to continuing our work with other multilateral banks and with IRENA, as well as engaging with governments and companies to increase investments in renewable energy in Asia and other regions and contribute toward the urgent energy transition. Thank you again for inviting AIIB to this assembly, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Born Asberg. I'm very happy to hear about how the bank is trying to include a sustainability view in the development and the deployment of its investments in infrastructure. For us to surpass this conflict that has been seen between the environment and infrastructure development in the past. But if we understand that infrastructure can help in ensuring a more sustainable world, a world where green energy is available for all, then we're doing we're making the right steps, and we are doing the right steps in the right direction. And thank you for reminding us the need to see forward and not only take confidence on the climate or environmental funds, because they are not enough. We need to align all the resources flows in order for them to be green, to think green, and to work green. It's not possible to do it with these funds with a surname. We need all the funds to be green. Thank you very much, Doctor. Now Let's move to Abidjan in the Ivory Coast. Dr. Kevin Karuki serves as the Vice President for Power, Energy, Climate, and Green Growth at the African Development Bank. Whoa, what a great mandate you have, Doctor. In December 2020, the African Bank and IRENA have signed a declaration of intent to confirm their wish to collaborate on supporting the continent's energy transition, with a strong emphasis on enhancing the role of renewable energy in NDCs and sustainable development objectives. Please tell us more about support by the African Bank to the renewable energy transition in the light of this declaration of intent.
Thank you very much. Irina DG, Francesco della Camera, honorable ministers, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to present the African Bank's development contribution to scaling up finance on renewables in Africa in this ministerial roundtable. It is particularly poignant because by coincidence, I find the discussions most apt as I'm actually participating in this meeting from Antananarivo, where I'm on a mission to break an impasse between a developer and the government on a project that would increase the contribution of renewable energy in Madagascar to 90%, based on honest broker and convening power of the bank. So I think the best way to look at this, and it also dovetails very well with the recent relationship that we established with IRENA, is to highlight how we have gone about supporting the Africa in the energy transition or increasing renewable energy. In this regard, I'll start by highlighting some of the key issues, some of which have already been mentioned, that we consider to be important to increased renewable generation in Africa. One, which has been, is the commitment by countries in renewable energy generation and the establishment of an enabling environment. This has already been mentioned. This addresses market risk and is typically supported by integrated energy planning processes and so on and so forth. We've heard from speakers the importance of regulatory environment in attracting renewable energy investment. Towards this, the bank in 2018 introduced the Energy Regulatory Index that aims to mainstream electricity sector regulation issues in Africa, while also benchmarking performance of participating countries against international best practice. Another thing that we think is very, very important, and you'll see how the bank helps in this regard, is the need for well-designed public-private partnerships, including the establishment of credible, and I had this before, and transparent procurement processes for investors and developers, which is also very important. Good examples for this is South Africa, whose procurement program will generate about 17,800 megawatts by 2030, of which about 4,000 megawatts are operational. And in Morocco, which hopes to generate about 2 gigawatts by 2030, and already generates about 600 megawatts. Here, the bank is supporting countries such as Angola, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Algeria in IPP procurement. The key thing here is to note that the more credible and transparent the procurement process for investors, both solicited and unsolicited, the more competitive is the process, and therefore the lower the tariffs. To evidence the bank's contribution to renewables, today the bank's share of energy, renewable energy in the bank's power generation investment now stands at 80%, including some approval of about 2,800 megawatts of capacity in the recent past. The other very important thing that we are discussing is the issue of increased interconnection of the power grids. I had somebody from Europe mention this earlier, because and what we are trying to do is to try see how we can be able to interconnect the pools, the networks and pools, and therefore enable development of larger projects, therefore enjoying economies of scale and result in lower tariffs. This will enable the support to support larger projects in inherently small grids, and this could potentially mitigate the intermittence of solar and wind generation, as this would provide access to flexible generation or spinning reserve, otherwise unavailable in a country. It is in this regard that the bank is leading the development of the Continental Master Plan for interconnection of African regional power pools. That is on the policy and side of things, but we are also doing many other things on the financing side. We are looking at various instruments that we can finance, various instruments that we can use to finance, include for technical assistance, and also providing concession financing instruments to support demonstrative rural renewable energy projects and create a track record in sectors. A case in point is the Africa Development Bank sponsored Distributed Energy Service Company, or DESCO program, focusing on household solar companies. We are also looking at various concessional financing instruments which build the capacity for local financing institutions and renewable energy markets by means of credit lines. We are also looking at various credit enhancement mechanisms, including partial risk guarantees, instruments that crowd in investors from eligible countries served by the bank. We are also providing partial credit guarantees to support countries and state-owned enterprises to meet their debt service obligations. So it's in this regard that the bank values the partnership with IRENA, as it facilitates collaborative knowledge exchange and capacity building in the development and implementation of demonstrative projects. It's as a consequence of this, and you've mentioned this, that the bank and IRENA recently signed a declaration of intent to further these objectives, including developing renewable energy case studies, which I've mentioned earlier, and promoting renewable energy investments through Climate Investment Platform and annual Africa Investment Forum. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karuki, and thank you for being so clear in terms of the need and the work of the bank in terms of deployment of many different instruments that are needed to respond to the diversity of situations you identify in terms of pushing for the energy transition to happen. Thank you very much for your words. Now let's go back to Europe again. And enter the UN world. Dr. Tariq Mtaira is the director of the Department of Energy of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Dr. Mtaira, the Department of Energy leads the transition to a sustainable energy future under the overarching mandate of sustainable industrial development. Please tell us how UNIDO has evolved its role and mandate to support the global energy transformation to renewable energy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Allow me at the start also to use the opportunity to thank IRENA and Director General Francesco La Camera for inviting UNIDO to participate in this very important ministerial. As you pointed out, UNIDO's mandate as a UN agency with focusing on inclusive and sustainable industrializations, renewables, play two important vectors in the process of helping member states on the industrialization pathway, if I may say. One is, of course, decarbonization of industry. Renewables is an important vector for decarbonizing industry, considering that industry is responsible almost to 1/3 of global emissions and energy input, final energy use. The second point, which I would like to spend a bit of time on, is renewables as a pathway to creating prosperity, jobs, and enable new enterprises and industries in developing and emerging economies. And this is a very important value proposition, especially to many countries that are aspires to really find the energy to boost their economic development. And here I want to focus a little bit on a group of countries we call frontier markets. These are countries where they are suffering the greatest in terms of energy deficit and where the need for energy is so critical to actually address their economic development priorities. On the other hand, they are the ones that are actually facing the greatest risk in attracting investments or challenges in attracting investments, and where the flow of investments are the least in terms of international investment and private sector investment into renewables. I think Dr. Vera in her keynote pointed out to this challenge where we don't see enough investment flowing into specific countries where they are in dire need of energy infrastructure, and particularly renewable energy infrastructure. And from that perspective, I think building on the track record we have and the work and the experience we have had working with many of these countries, I think there are three areas in which I think we can sort of bring forward in this kind of discussion. One is the role of public finance, and here is very important that public and development finance really bring a dedicated attention to helping these countries address the barriers in the market itself through de-risking and regulatory support to government. The second area, I think, where it is essentially to create the value proposition and the incentives for local players to engage in the renewable energy is to support local developers and local market players in frontier markets to engage with the development of renewable energy at various levels of value chain, at various segments of the value chain, from local entrepreneurs to suppliers to developers to maintenance and operations. And there is actually a critical role also for the international development partners to support the emergence of dedicated instruments to guide and create a pipeline of local projects and local developers. I'm pleased to say in UNIDO, we are a host to one of these facilities called the Private Finance and Advisory Network, which works with developers in frontier markets, in least developing markets to assist entrepreneurs with bringing projects to the level of bankability. And I think there's a need for more of this kind of support to really bring project to the private sector and to the international financing community. But not even that, but also need to build capacity within local financial institution for local financing within currency financing of renewable energy projects. And here I also want to say that we look forward to work actually very much with the climate investment platform, with IRENA, where the PFAN sort of support mechanism can really sync well and run well with the efforts of the climate investment platform. And thirdly, and I think this is the most important one in terms of de-risking, I think we seem to underestimate the need to build capacity, human capacity in policymakers, in the skilling of local entrepreneurs, and in the quality infrastructure, where all these variables do actually lead to sort of an ecosystem de-risking. If you have the right skills in terms of installers, operators, and if you have policymakers that are tuned to all the options and the particular design of effective regulatory and administrative procedures, and if you have the quality infrastructure for testing and for building confidence in the end products, you actually generally de-risk the market. We don't see enough investments going in these kind of complementary capacities that are essential for the market to operate. And I think this is where, if we want to scale up investment, we have to deal with these complementary inputs into the marketplace to make a change. I think that's in a nutshell. I wanted to bring these 3 points that are important, at least for scaling up investment, with a dedicated focus on challenged markets or frontier markets, these are countries with the most need for energy to create prosperity and jobs in the long term. Back to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Dr. Antaira. Thank you very much for your statement. And now let's move to Denmark. His Excellency, Mr. Thomas Anker, is the Climate Ambassador and Prime Minister's Climate Envoy for Denmark. Good afternoon, Ambassador. Your country has been an early and long-time supporter of IRENA's work, directly engaging in ensuring needed support is provided to countries that require it the most. Please, tell us more about Denmark's strategy in supporting the sustainable energy transition globally and what role private investment play towards achieving the 2030 goals. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hello also to the Chair and Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA. First, just a word on the global health crisis, which of course is hitting all of us, and is why we are meeting virtually. It has been encouraging to see the effort across the world to tackle the crisis collectively now, and also to at least argue why we should build back better and greener and focus on renewable energy as part of the reconstruction or recovery effort once that gets underway. And I very much applaud IRENA's role in arguing this case. It's very much needed, and the accelerated deployment of renewable energy is indeed vital in this regard. And in a way, the pandemic and the climate crisis are two sides of the same coin, in that they show the stresses that we as a human collectivity on this planet are going through. We see impacts not only on human lives, biodiversity, but also on crops, forestry, infrastructure, and industrial value chains, posing very real physical risks. There is also a real risk, we think, that assets might strand if companies are not able to adapt their business models in due time to a world where policies, technologies, and consumer behavior are all becoming greener. And that's why, Mr. Chair, to react to your question, that's why we need ambition, ambition, and ambition. We need ambition in terms of policies, more ambition, and we've seen a number of countries stepping up with very ambitious announcements, which need to be followed through with the second layer of ambition, which is the ambition of planning, the ambition of market regulation, the ambition of creating NDCs and energy plans that are commensurate with the ambition set. But then we also need the ambition of finance and the ambition of financial frameworks, framework conditions, the ambition of the marketplace in a way to deliver on the political ambition. And in a way, we need to create a virtuous cycle of political, financial, and market ambition so that we can deliver on the aspirations and on the green recovery. To do that effectively, governments, private investors, and companies have to collaborate and learn from each other, both when it comes to building new business models, developing financial vehicles, and creating those policy frameworks that can mitigate the risk. In Denmark, we have established 13 climate partnerships with all sectors of the business side, including the financial sector, in order to include their input into how we achieve our 70% emissions reduction target by 2030. And these 13 partnerships are integrated, in a way, part of the policy making and policy creation. Another example of public-private collaboration that I want to mention here is a project called the Climate Investment Coalition, which includes both the Danish government, but also a range of institutional investors. Our goal is to engage pension funds and other financial actors globally to increase their green investments towards 2030. The Danish pension funds have already announced that they would invest $50 billion in green transition towards 2030. And already in 2020, they increased their investments by 56%, $8 billion. There is now a Nordic agreement to bring all the pension funds together, and we are working on even enlarging that club, who not only make lofty commitments, but actually deliver financing on the ground. And we even need more private investors on board. With decreasing costs of renewables, green investments are no longer only a matter of doing the right thing or mitigating risk, as many have pointed out, but also make good financial sense in their own right, a trend that the pandemic even has highlighted. One way of inducing private investments is to deploy innovative approaches to generate a pipeline of projects and identify investment opportunities at scale. And several of you have mentioned the CIP, the Climate Investment Platform, where IRENA partners with UNDP, Sustainable Energy for All, and also works with the Green Climate Fund. We're very happy to have been amongst the first to support this platform, and we believe that it will assist both developing countries and private investors in matching needs with capital. And Francesco, we really look forward to the first meeting of the platform whenever, I mean, we are anxious for it to actually take off and show its true colors, although you are already working hard on making it come true. There's also a lot of talk about blended finance, investment partnerships between public and private sector, which supports and strengthens the capability to attract private investors and realize projects in developing countries, projects which otherwise cannot be financed due to, again, the perceived and real risks. And from the Danish side, we have our DFI, which is called the Danish Investment Fund for Developing Countries. It manages both a climate investment fund and an SDG fund, where, again, the Danish pension funds and the government have co-funded and contribute to, the pension funds contribute to 60% of the fund's total capital of about $1 billion. Through this vehicle, for example, they have invested in 10% of the equity in Binban, which was mentioned before, the world's largest solar park in Egypt. This fund contributes with venture capital and knowledge to developing countries and emerging economies. And finally, when it comes to pure public finance, we are increasingly focusing our development aid on green energy and climate. We have doubled our contribution to the Green Climate Fund, and we are reviewing our ODA strategy this year with a view to sharply increasing our funding in order to contribute to closing the energy access gap in Africa with renewable energy solutions. And we're also working hard on the European Union side to dramatically increase the European Union funding of sustainable energy. So in conclusion, we would very much like to work with IRENA, all of you here today, to accelerate the global green transition and the achievement of SDG 7. We will play a central part in the UN high-level dialogue on energy that will take place next September. And we look forward to working with all of you in making that a huge success and accelerating the transition even further and faster. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your words. And thank you for reminding us the role that pension funds can play in this transition. Given their long-term management strategy of the resources, they can be a serious partner in terms of pushing the development of this new renewable energy effort. And developing countries where we have gone through the establishment of private pension funds, for instance, they need to learn from the experience in developed countries in order to identify new sources for increasing the pension in the future for their associates. Thank you very much. Now let's go to the World Bank. Dr. Demetrios Papathanassiou, I hope I've pronounced it well, is the manager for the Energy and Extractives Global Practice for the South Asia region of the World Bank. Doctor, the World Bank has a portfolio of projects and trust funds of more than $10 billion and annual lending commitments averaging about $1.3 billion. Could you kindly tell us more about what is the World Bank's post-COVID recovery agenda for renewable energy finance? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Quijadria, and good evening to your excellencies and colleagues in the East. Good afternoon in Europe, and a good morning and a good day here in this side of the Americas. I would like to just briefly inform you that I am representing the bank as the Global Director of Energy and Extractives. And this is happening at a time when the world remains in a crisis on the health side. And we all work from home with all the distractions and the difficulties and the fun that we have from working from home. But in terms of the next crisis, because I think we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the health crisis of COVID-19. Indeed, we have the vaccines, and I think over the next several months, but certainly within the next 12 months, this crisis will have significantly abated. And the next crisis that the world is facing is, of course, the climate change crisis. And the bank has identified that for a long time, and we have made renewable energy and the promotion of renewable energy a key component of the world's strategy of dealing with climate change. And of course, we all know and we all recognize how important energy is for the economic development of the countries that we work in and for sustained economic growth. So at the integration of the climate change problematic, the need for energy for economic development, and indeed for resilience in this health crisis, our focus and our urgency into promoting and thinking clearly about renewable energy and clean energy in general has become more urgent. On the side of the World Bank, for some time now, we have published the world's resources on wind and solar. These are publicly available information and give a very quick starting point on assessing where countries are in terms of their potential. We have also clearly identified that the main challenge that we see as we go into implementation, frankly, is not in the financing. We strongly believe that for well-prepared projects, in a good policy environment, the financing will come. And we see that, especially when it comes to wind and solar, these technologies are relatively easy to deploy, rapid, modular, and you can get projects very quickly. On top of that, renewable energy technologies have the significant advantage of providing a lot of locally value-added to the economy, especially when it comes to jobs. So I think in the developing countries where we work, we clearly see a confluence of drivers that suggest that the future for renewable energy is very bright. Now, what are the challenges? The main challenge that we see is the ability of electricity systems, especially in the less developed world, to absorb all this renewable energy. I think we can set aside the question that we had 5 or 10 years ago that renewable energy is too expensive. In many, and actually the most of the countries where we work, renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy on an energy basis. But of course, it does have challenges on reliability and the challenges of absorbing large quantities of renewable energy in the systems. And I think that our challenge as we go forward is the technical in terms of having smarter grids, investing in energy storage projects, and the World Bank's initiative on global energy storage is a key component of what we're doing. We certainly see a much more important role on hydropower. I think hydropower is a key clean energy solution that we have to more deeply think about and maybe rethink the way we use hydropower in energy systems, but we see it as a key part of the solution. And of course, more regional integration and cooperation and exchanges among countries. On the side of the World Bank, we are initiating a program to help countries develop good planning systems on these fronts, how they can go towards lower growth scenarios. And I think the additional benefit that will come as we all learn how we can use even more and more renewable energy in our energy systems, is that we can gradually start cleaning up the transportation sector. Electrification is happening. We see millions of three-wheelers in Asia running on batteries. Increasingly, we see more and more the two-wheelers getting on batteries as well. And I think these are great news for the developing world. These are great news for the balance of payments of many of the countries that are stressed. And in general, we see a very bright future. My last point, Dr. Kihandria, is that we just recently published our report on the regulatory indicators on sustainable energy. The so-called RISE report is available at rise.worldbank.org. And I would encourage you to look at how your countries compare with other countries in terms of the environment and how friendly it is for investments. On the World Bank, we are strongly supportive of renewable energy, I think more than ever. And we're looking forward to continue to work with IRENA, with our colleagues in the multilateral development banks, and with each and every country to help growth towards a cleaner energy and sustainable economic growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for a clear view on how we need to put some attention to issues like the quality of the grids, like the storage, that are challenges that are much more difficult to attain compared to the generation part of the equation in terms of the panels or the solar, the windmills or the. So thank you very much, and thank you for bringing the issue of planning, the planning of the energy systems at the country level and even regional level when you have more than one country that can interlink their generation or their power systems as a main element for us to be able to move the transition forward. Thank you very much, Doctor. Now let's move to closer geographically to where I am sitting, and give a quick look to what is happening in Latin America and the Caribbean. Dr. Gary Jackson is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, which is involved in creating expert knowledge based optimizing technological solutions through tool development. CRE, Dr. Jackson has recently launched their project preparation facility. Please tell us how that is aimed to help scale up finance for renewables in the Caribbean region.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you very much to IRENA for this invitation. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here this morning, this afternoon, or this evening with you, based on where you may be on the world at this time. To Your Excellencies, the distinguished panelists, and to distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our participants, thank you and welcome. It's interesting to listen to what has been discussed so far and to understand the region's challenges, being a mostly small island development states. It's a double-edged sword, as one of our colleagues mentioned earlier. We have the pandemic and we have climate change in the midst of earthquakes. You know, we have a volcano in St. Vincent that is slowly erupting. So for us, it's a double-edged sword. It's a small population. You would recognize that the Caribbean maybe less than 0.7% of global population if we take into consideration Cuba, Hispaniola, and all the others. But within the CARICOM member states, it's only 18 million. So we're very small and very vulnerable to a lot of things that are happening to us within the global scale. Again, you know, because we're so small, economies of scale is going to be a challenge. And obviously, we are not going to be able to be a part of these massive investments that has been described so far. But yet there are investments in order of magnitude, maybe $1 billion, maybe $2 billion, given where the countries wanted to go with a lot of the resources, geothermal being one of them, wind energy, solar energy, biomass, and hydro. So what we have done, we have established a 5P principle within how we look at this development and how we believe investment will come into the region. The 5P principle refers to people. The first piece, people. Understanding people need. And I've heard one of our distinguished panelists mention about industry. And for us, people is referring to residents, people referring to small and medium enterprises and how they are going to survive this global pandemic and climate change. And people relating to how they operate in the industry. You will recognize within the region, largest product for economy is tourism. And climate change and the pandemic has hit it both very hard. So we have lost a lot of traction because of the global pandemic. I mean, the hotels are now very empty. People are losing their jobs. I mean, as it is globally. So we recognize that. So we have to understand the people requirement, their needs to see how we're going to build this thing forward. The second piece, policy, writing the right policy and policy that is appropriate, policy that will inform the regulatory reform that is going to be required to ensure that the right investment with certainty comes into the region. A policy that refers to the people and that has the stakeholder consultation of the people to ensure that it's appropriate and customized within the local context. The planning, you all have mentioned the planning, and one of the things that we have engaged in is this third P is planning. We have now engaged in integrated resource and resilience plans. And these integrated resource and resilience plans will now look at the demand, the supply side, and how climate will actually impact. In particular, we will also look at public health issues that will impact these systems and the operation of these systems. And from that, we can develop projects that will come with some sense of understanding, that will come with some sense of knowing what it is that we can deploy, the technology that will be appropriate at whatever parts of the grid, the transmission and distribution system that is going to be required to ensure that we have reliability, sustainability, and availability for all our stakeholders across the region. Projects that would be identified in such a way that will give investors the confidence that these projects are worthy of investment. And then the last P is partnerships. And we have all spoken about partnerships. I think one thing the microbe, I call it the microbe under this COVID pandemic. One thing the microbe has taught us is that we have to build stronger communities going forward. It is saying that no man should be left behind. It is telling us that we need to work together as one globe. No more divisions of border controls and all of that. We have to build greater, but with responsibilities, of course, with caveats that we have to be responsible and that we are our brothers' keepers. So this project preparation facility is really facilitating understanding where a project is and helping that project along the pipeline. Some of these projects might not be in a state of readiness, and we want to have signposting to ensure that developers can actually be in a position to take these projects to where we want to attract these projects into our pipeline so that we can help them along the way. If it's a pre-feasibility study, it's a feasibility study, and then we do a matchmaking event. And we are happy to know that IRENA has recognized this PPF, and we are hoping to work with IRENA to help to facilitate these developments and to help to facilitate the transition that we are looking for within the region, within our very small space, but relevant and appropriate for regional integration and transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your words. Now, if you allow me, I will ask Mr. Ariel Yepes of the Energy Division Chief of the Inter-American Development Bank, which is involved in identifying, proposing, and implementing energy projects that promote a sustainable development agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean. If you, Ariel, can please share with us some of the success stories of supporting sustainable energy transition in Latin America. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister Gabriel Grijandria, Vice President, Mr. Rolando Castro, and Director General Francesco La Camara. Thanks a lot for the invitation to this important Ministerial Plenary meeting. Well, as you know, investing in non-conventional renewable energy has risen sharply, particularly in Latin America over the past decade. The installed capacity of wind and solar energy generation has increased 22 times from 2009 to 2018. And this large increase is basically due to two factors. Well, the great abundance and quality of non-conventional energy resources, mainly solar and wind, and the reduction of the cost of these technologies. This has made solar and wind energy very competitive in Latin America compared to fossil fuels. Renewable prices for contracts awarded through auctions in Latin America and the Caribbean have set world record lows. Since the first implementation more than 15 years ago in Brazil, Latin America has led the way worldwide in terms of renewable energy auctions design, providing an innovative model to the rest of the world. The IDB has played a critical role mitigating the risk of new renewable technologies, providing additional security to both government and financing actors. The bank has supported energy ministries by developing sound policies and regulatory frameworks that provide an adequate environment to invest in non-conventional energy. But it is important to put in context the difficult environment in which the region is stuck due to the impact of the pandemic. This health crisis has hit Latin America and the Caribbean very hard. As countries tend to design the policies to get out of the crisis, it is very important to decide what kind of energy infrastructure best meets long-term goals. In fact, the IDB is acting on behalf of 10 countries in Latin America as the technical secretariat for the Renewables in Latin America and the Caribbean Initiative, or RELAC. The main objective of this initiative is to reach a regional target of 70% renewables in the power sector by 2030. The initiative will coordinate and work together with other agencies such as IRENA, and we are happy to work with Francesco and his team, using this platform to exchange knowledge and match financial needs on the project's development side. We are very aware of the great financing challenge for the energy transition ahead. And what we are looking for is on the best manner to support countries' effort to adopt more renewable energy. Considering the future demand growth and the needs for financing energy projects, every possible financial effort from multilaterals, private sector, and donors is critical. Renewable energy projects are capital intensive, as we know, and require extended debt repayment periods. This limits the volume of commercial financing available, making multilateral banks' participation more critical in providing financing. IDB's ability to channel climate finance and leverage other blended finance resources has been fundamental, creating the needed trust and comfort for the local commercial capital markets to provide long-term financing. To conclude, there are very good examples on how multilaterals can help mobilize financing from non-traditional investors, making the local capital markets more comfortable with renewable energy technologies. This demonstrational effect has been fundamental in markets that were early adopters of renewable energy technologies, such as Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, and Uruguay. In these countries, the IDB contributed at the first stage to what is now a solid industry providing jobs and clean energy. Thank you for inviting me to this important ministerial meeting, and thank you for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Yepes. Thank you very much for your words, telling us about the success stories here in Latin America. Something I've already seen by myself in Peru and with my previous experience working with IDB as well some years ago. Thank you very much. Now let's move to our last panelist. Last but not least, Mrs. Aida Sidikova is the Director of the Energy Eurasia Division, Sustainable Infrastructure Group at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Please, Mrs. Sidikova, share with us your 2021 strategy for supporting renewables in view of COVID-19 recovery and the Green New Deal.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Irina for this opportunity to speak and represent the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Exactly a year after EBRD and Irina signed the MOU on cooperation in January 2020. And what a remarkable year it was. The global pandemic and economic crisis brought the discourse on climate change to the front. Resilience, agility, and build back better were the sound bites of 2020. But we at the BRD go beyond the rhetoric and slogans. In the year when we rolled out the COVID solidarity package, the bank also adopted 3 guiding principles for everything we do. It's green, it's digital, and it's inclusive. In the midst of the pandemic, EBRD committed to a new ambitious target of over 50% financing volume, becoming green by 2025. In the energy sector, green meant that while helping countries and clients with immediate support to keep the lights on, the bank pursued policy work and investments in scaling up renewables. So this was the response mode for our activities during the pandemic. To date, EBRD has financed more than 10 gigawatts of renewables across over 200 projects worth 20 billion euro in 31 countries. This includes 750 megawatts of our largest hallmark Benban solar in Egypt, the country where we now move to financing competitively auctioned projects. In 2020, we provided financing for 16 projects supporting 1 gigawatt of renewable energy. One of these was a 100 megawatt Nur Navai solar PV plant in Uzbekistan with Masdar, the first renewable project in the country, and at a record low price. Or just yesterday, we signed actually another Masdar project now in Poland. Kazakhstan, where we financed close to 800 megawatt of renewables to date. These are all examples of EBRD pushing for green and tilting to green, even during the COVID. We're a publicly owned multilateral development bank. Our policy dialogue is conducted with governments and authorities. But our investments are overwhelmingly in the private sector. So in country after country, we see how well-structured competitive frameworks can catalyze the private sector to deliver renewable capacity faster, at scale, and more cheaply than anyone expected. So our role as a development bank is to provide money, but also to be an honest broker, to help the public and private sectors come together and create the circumstances where private money and private energy can deliver this vital public good. In addition to providing financing, we help governments put in place frameworks that make those investments possible, including through renewable auctions in 14 of our countries. And of course, we saw record solar prices in Egypt, Albania, and Uzbekistan. The accelerated uptake of renewables will not be possible without reliable electricity grids. It was mentioned before. To prevent the networks from becoming a bottleneck, there should be adequate regulatory frameworks, significant investments, and deployment of innovative technologies, including energy storage, demand-side management, and smart grids. This is where our digital comes into play as an area where we stand ready to support through policy and investments focus. Our third principle is inclusion. We believe that energy transition goes beyond physical systems, energy systems, beyond megawatts of renewable energy. It also lies in the shift in the mindset and behaviors. Irina estimates that the number of jobs in the renewable sector could increase from 11 million in 2018 to 29 million in 2050. This presents a brand new opportunity for women to expand their skills and talents and participate in a high value, high growth sector. Clean energy transition will require innovative solutions and business models to be adopted with greater participation from a diverse talent pool. Failure to realize this can impact achievement of sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy market. One of the recent examples of EBRD inclusion activities is actually in Kazakhstan, where in 2020, we supported the first 100 megawatt commercially funded wind farm and promoted access to employment opportunities for women through high quality technical skills training. To conclude, the world needs a faster and bigger clean energy transition, and renewables are a big part of the solution. We at EBRD are committed to delivering renewables in a green, digitalized, and inclusive manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. And I love this GDI principles, and I think we all need to use them and to incorporate them as part of our work and our day-to-day life, I think. Well, we have arrived at the end of our long panel. If you have been able to hear, we have gone all through the world, jumping from the highest developed countries in the world to developing countries, from the big ones such as India to the small ones in the Caribbean. We've seen the renewables work everywhere. And the limitations or the constraints are no longer technical, or the technical ones are not so difficult to overcome as they used to be. But we need to focus in other issues that need our attention, as planning, energy planning, for instance, regulatory frameworks, adequate regulatory frameworks that give the right signal for public funds and especially for private funds to be deployed in renewables. We have heard about the need to use and to be creative in terms of financial instruments. We have heard about the experience in Egypt with the green bond, the first one in the MENA region that has pushed for the renewable transition in that country, and that is something that we developing countries can learn from this experience and work there. We have heard from how having a common goal between public and private sector is something that can ease the process, that can help very much in terms of moving forward the renewable energy agenda. We have heard, for instance, from Luxembourg about the need to sophisticate our financial instruments, how to go from de-risking the public sector to generate instruments that are also attractive for the private sector, and give the sign that renewables are no longer only a solution to an environmental concern, but a good investment and a very, very competitive and attractive economic investment. We have heard about we should not be afraid of discussing about subsidies. Subsidies, if they are well focused, if they are focused to the poor, to the ones that need them, and they are well designed, can help to boost renewable energy deployment in different countries. We have heard also about the need to blend local capital, both public and private, with the international flows, because none of them by themselves will be able to achieve the scale of the challenge we are facing. We need all financial resources to be aligned in terms of this new green approach, this new climate resilient or zero carbon approach in the future. We have heard about the need to have project portfolios, and how having bankable projects is still a bottleneck for the development and increasing of the renewable energy agenda in our countries. We have heard experiences from the central bank, for instance, a central bank that has understood that their role in communicating the importance of environmental sustainability, of sustainable energy as part of the macroeconomic stability of a country such as Hungary is important, and that's it's a big step forward in terms of getting big allies that can help us to move ahead the agenda. We have heard many other discussions, but I don't want to take more time, and I will pass the wheel back to our Vice President for him to be able to open the floor for the participation of the other participants in this event. Finally, I would like to thank the opportunity and let you know that in a world where the war of screens has been openly declared, we appreciate, I think my fellow panelists will share this, that you have chosen this very screen and this very panel over others that are available at the same time. And we hope that the discussions have met your expectations. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Ministro Quijandría. I want to commend you on the way you conducted this panel and also thank all the distinguished participants, both from the public, private sector, from the investment banks, and also want to commend Irina and Director General La Camera for this important topic that we put on the table. Just as a country that is working on high shares of renewable, I just want to mention that in IRENA, along with other countries, we have been discussing also the need to not forget about these countries that are already there on the renewable energy sector, that we need also financing for keep diversifying our grids, but also to electrify the industry and the transport sectors. So I think this was very well taken by Irina, and there was already enhancing dialogue on high shares of renewable in energy system. And this process now turned into a collaborative framework within IRENA. So I really want to appreciate this support from IRENA for this type of also countries who are also trying to lead this, and which examples could be taken and shared with other countries that are in this transition. So thank you very much. And we have still a long list of people that want to intervene, and even though we have already exceeded our time allocation, but we will continue because I think there will be important contributions from the floor. So I just want to remind you that the interventions are limited to 3 minutes. I will now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Hans Olav Ibrek from Norway. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thanks to the panelists for this interesting discussion that we've had so far. Just to say a few words about Norway, I guess that most of you actually know the state of renewable energy in Norway, that over 70% of our total energy consumption is from renewable energy, and nearly 100% of our electricity is renewable energy, and that 54% of EVs sold or cars sold last year were actually EVs, just indicating that with the right financing and the right stimulus messages, you can get a fast and quick uptake of electric vehicles. We're also a large provider of climate finance, and we doubled our support to the Green Climate Fund, which is a key partner to many of you and also to many of the institutions that have taken the floor so far in our discussion. So just let me offer some perspectives on financing. Channeling the required doubling of finance to enable the energy transition is a challenge faced by every country and organization, and the scale and speed of this transition will require all forms of finance, public and private, domestic and international. In Paris, we committed to make finance flows consistent with a pathway towards low greenhouse gas and climate resilient development, and this should catalyze the trillions of investment needed. But of course, it will require a fundamental shift in the global financial system. The bulk of investments will need to come from the private sector, and we've heard today that 86% of finance for renewables is currently coming from the private sector. Of course, private finance is not a substitute for increased public finance flows, but it will be vital in increasing the scale and reach of the energy transition. In the least developed countries, which is of particular concern to us coming from Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Development Cooperation, the situation is particularly worrying because very little private finance flows to the LDCs, just a few $1 billion annually in renewable investments in sub-Saharan Africa. So in these countries, as has been highlighted by previous speakers, we need to focus on establishing appropriate governance, institutional and regulatory structures, which are key to attract the capital required. To crowd in finance from private sources, we need to use public funds strategically by supporting capacity building, creating a conducive, transparent and stable investment framework, supporting demonstration projects and developing blended finance initiatives, and providing risk mitigation instruments, especially to reduce the off-taker risk. Then, as was also highlighted by the representative from the World Bank, if we get the framework right, then also investments and resources will flow. From the Norwegian point of view, we are now in the process of supporting activities to strengthen the private sector, and we are setting up new guarantee mechanisms, and we are also exploring to set up an investment fund for renewable energy in developing countries, building on the experiences our private equity provider Norfund has gained in investing in renewable energy in developing countries. As an example of using fiscal instruments, we in our climate plan also has proposed to increase the carbon tax substantially to drive the required transition. And of course, we would encourage other countries to implement carbon taxes and also phase out fossil fuel subsidies. So let me conclude by saying that a failure to transition quickly to sustainable energy systems will jeopardize the fight against climate change and threaten human well-being, ecosystems and economies for centuries. So we need to step up our ambition and deliver on our commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. Now I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Francis Fanon from the United States of America. Sir, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Irina, for organizing this important session. It's good to see many of you, again, old friends. Without a doubt, finance is the lifeblood of the clean energy transition. And it's important to note that the big driver here, as Irina pointed out, is the private sector finance, representing nearly 90% of clean energy investment. Governments have a critical role to ensure appropriate enabling environments that boost investor confidence. Capital flows to where it's most welcomed. That means that governments must promote market transparency, strong project development teams, and a range of policies and regulations to encourage and support increased capital flows. While each country, and in many cases local governments, will take a different approach, there are fundamental and best practices that we can share and to learn and benefit from each other's experience. Although countries may declare a clean energy ambition or target, they sometimes face challenges in executing that and meeting their goals. Through collaboration, however, we can fill those gaps. For example, we launched the United States-India Flexible Resources Initiative, or FREE, a technology-neutral, data-based, whole-of-government effort that advances cost-effective strategies to ensure India's power system can integrate its growing renewable energy over the next decade. FREE signals new investment opportunities and flexible resources by supporting an open, transparent, and rules-based energy sector. It will facilitate the private investments needed to create a flexible and robust grid that can deliver low-cost, clean power throughout the country. In order to mobilize private sector capital, FREE will include pilot projects to ground truth the business case for financing these projects. And we believe FREE will be something that can be replicated in other countries. The scale of capital needed for the energy transition is great, but the scale of minerals needed for it is exponential. As Irina has reported in the past, many of these minerals are produced or processed in countries with poor governance or human rights records. This can create a meaningful headwind against investment and thereby deprive the world of the clean energy minerals needed for the transition. As such, it is critical that we promote a transparent and responsible energy mineral supply chain so that the private capital has confidence to make the required investments. If we fail to remove the cloud and are unable to create a supply chain to meet tomorrow's demand surge, then we will lack the minerals for the solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, electric vehicles that are going to power and are indeed powering the clean energy transformation. The United States launched the Energy Resources Governance Initiative, or ERGI, to address this challenge. ERGI brings together countries along with the founding members, Australia, Botswana, Canada, Peru, and many of your countries have joined us for ERGI meetings and events, including a webinar that Irina co-hosted last June. We hope to strengthen our engagement with all of you on this important clean energy finance issue going forward. Although my term of service in government will end tomorrow, the US commitment to Irina's mission will certainly endure. And I just want to give a personal recognition to my friend Francesco for his leadership and bringing really Irina to the next evolution to advance the clean energy transition. With that, thank you all.
Thank you to the distinguished representative of the United States. Now I give the floor to Mr. Mike Allen from New Zealand. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice President. I don't want to comment particularly on New Zealand's role in renewables, as I had the opportunity to do that yesterday, but I wanted to reflect very briefly on an excellent discussion that we've had today. I think the challenge that we face is that we have to look at making a decision between where we can direct investment as to where it is most attractive and well received, and other countries where it has the greatest need but offers obviously considerable challenge. And what we're trying to do obviously is to balance the impact that renewables can have with climate change against those needs for access to energy, which is obviously crucial. From a practical point of view, one point I'd like to raise is that there is a constant cry that there's a lack of bankable projects and that good projects are hard to identify. And I don't think any of us have any dispute about that. But I would like to stress that this is a complex situation and that as we're seeing with the CIP that Irina is promoting, while we can identify projects, what is also needed is to provide considerable national development capability to make this sustainable. And I have some fear that by cherry picking projects and funding them without providing a lot of background support in country will be detrimental long term. And obviously I'm talking more about LDCs and the more developed countries. I think that also we have had excellent discussion around the role of public and private sector. And in many countries, it is important that the public sector continues to play a significant role to drive the markets. This is a long-term development. Many of us have been in this business for 30 or 40 years and have seen what has been achieved. Significant things are being achieved now, but it's not time to step back and assume that the private sector will take over in many countries and run it forward. And perhaps as a final comment, I think that we've had an excellent panel. We've learned a considerable amount, but I think that we could perhaps have a contribution in future from the demand side. Perhaps we could have people who are on the ground and who can speak to us firsthand about the requirements. Dr. Songwe made an excellent introduction talking about the balance between what we're achieving in residential solar home systems and what we need to do for industry, for growth, those sorts of things I think we all need to understand. So thank you. And to the Director General, congratulations for an excellent panel, very well received, and I think of considerable value. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, New Zealand. Now I give the floor to Mr. Norbert Gorisen from Germany. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, and thanks a lot for the excellent panel we had shared by the Peruvian minister. I really enjoyed that. 2020 was a year of human tragedies and economic hardship, but what contributed to keep our critical infrastructures and services in Germany running was a power system dominated by renewables. In Germany, more than 50% of the electricity production last year was coming from renewable energies, mostly wind and solar. So renewables have demonstrated to be reliable, affordable, and resilient, and they are one of the main pillars of climate protection. Globally, renewables are the preferred destination for investors today. And in order to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, we certainly have to transfer the whole electricity production towards renewable energies before the middle of the century. And we must almost triple annual investments in renewables to reach these goals and SDG 7. It has been said by many people, and I really wanted to highlight in particular also what has been said by the Secretary of UNECA, Mrs. Vera Songwe. Enabling regulatory environments and long-term targets are essential to leverage the market's existing appetite for renewables. This was true before COVID, and it continues to be so right now. Together with green recovery packages that invest in needed infrastructure and stimulated demand, renewables can accelerate the energy transition and the socio-economic development during the recovery from COVID-19 and beyond. In Germany, we have undertaken a number of measures to mobilize investments needed to reaching 65% renewables in our power system by 2030 and putting our sectors like transport and industries on track to become climate neutral by 2050. Two examples. First, the German reformed Renewable Energy Act entered into force only 3 weeks ago. Elements include a binding target for the 65% renewable electricity in 2030, the commitment to achieve climate neutrality in the electricity sector before 2050, strengthening electricity self-provision and landlord-to-tenant electricity, introduce new models for local communities to benefit from wind energy in their areas and thus also increase the acceptability of wind energy, and accept green hydrogen from certain electricity surcharges to boost development and market introduction. Second, our green recovery package is investing 2.5 billion euros in infrastructure and research for e-mobility while moving towards greater CO2-based taxation of cars. Another important tool is the European Sustainable Finance Taxonomy, the centerpiece of the European Commission's Action Plan to Finance Sustainable Growth. The taxonomy classifies environmentally sustainable economic activities. By increasing transparency, the taxonomy has the potential to incentivize investors to shift more private capital into sustainable projects like renewables. And internationally, Germany is working with countries on creating enabling policy environments and bankable projects. We also cooperate to facilitate access to finance via contributing to the Green Climate Fund and on providing seed and equity finance as well as de-risking investments. Two examples. One, it's a facility to manage local currency challenges, the Currency Exchange Fund, which provides finance in local currencies. And secondly, a very new facility which will work with the private sector and help to operationalize private investments in African countries by providing blended finance and capacities. To conclude, good framework conditions are a key factor to attract investments. Supporting countries with this and join forces with existing initiatives and institutions is one of the core tasks of IRENA. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Germany. Now I give the floor to Mr. Jochen Penker from Austria. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, dear General Director, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates. First of all, many thanks again for the warm welcome we experienced yesterday. We are all happy, Austria is happy to be finally a full member of the IRENA family. And this is our contribution, our first contribution to this important plenary discussion. Austria believes that clear and consistent frameworks are necessary to avoid lock-in effects, stranded investments, greenwashing, and to ensure confidence and transparency in financial markets. We need multi-stakeholder processes to find the best ways to finance climate protection, fostering large-scale financing for renewables. For example, in Austria, the Ministry of Finance and the ministry responsible for climate action and energy, our ministry established a green finance focal group, including national stakeholders from the finance sector, pension funds, supervisory authorities, and representatives from the real economy and the scientific sector. The outcome is a green finance agenda for Austria, which will be published soon, and it will consist of numerous measures, also aiming to support the financing of renewables. Consumer demand and shareholder expectation show there is now much greater appetite within the global investment community for sustainable projects. Of course, the focus shall not only be on generation, but on the whole energy system, including transmission beyond borders, as was also mentioned by Minister Turmes, distribution and storage. This increase in appetite will need to be supported by further enhancement of financial expertise and capacities throughout the energy sphere. We need innovative solutions that help to shape bankable renewable projects, help to better share risk, and make it easier to attract private investors and unlock financing for sustainable projects. There is a need to put an additional effort in supporting new business models, both for new entrants to the energy market, as well as for established market participants, such as oil and gas companies, in order to find efficient ways to accompany them through the transition process. IRENA could support building internal capacities of institutional investors, such as pension funds, we heard it today, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, in the areas of governance, financial, technical, and legal structuring, as well as the impacts of climate change and institutional investors' own role in minimizing these impacts. This could also help institutional investors to enter the renewable sphere, share best practices, and learn to manage new risks while maximizing the benefits from renewable energy assets. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Austria. Now I give the floor to Colombia. Mr. Miguel Lotero Robledo, Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Vice President, for giving us the floor. Honorable IRENA authorities, countries' representatives, panelists, and participants, good afternoon. I want to thank IRENA for convening this event and inviting me to share Colombia's perspective on how governmental intervention can help increase investors' engagement in the renewable energy sector and facilitate the flow of capital into these projects. In Colombia, The quest to accelerate the deployment of variable renewable energy started not long ago. As a country that traditionally relied on hydropower due to the abundance of water resources, policy and regulatory developments for variable renewables only started in 2014. Despite the recent incorporation of these technologies, in Colombia, we take pride in the enormous progress that we have conquered in the last years, which support our goal on cutting emissions and more resilient systems to the effects of climate change. Thanks to the results we have gained over these last years, today Colombia is internationally recognized as a regional energy transition leader, and this has become one of the main driving forces of our country development. Let me showcase these in numbers. In 2018, Colombia has less than 30 megawatts of installed capacity for variable renewable energy generation. By December of 2020, in just 2 years, we multiplied this installed capacity by 7, reaching more than 225 megawatts. Currently, our country has 9 large-scale solar farms, representing a reduction of around 370,000 tons of CO2 per year, which is equivalent to the basic consumption of more than 200,000 households. Furthermore, by 2022, we will have increased our energy generation by 50 times compared to 2018. Our ambition is to have nearly 2,500 megawatts of non-hydro renewable energy installed by the year, which means that almost 12% of our electricity will come from unconventional renewables, mainly solar and wind. All this comes as a result of the implementation of several policies aimed at increasing the appetite of investors and funders in renewable energy and energy efficiency. We increased from 5 to 15 years the time for which the 50% of investment uplift was available, leveling the field between established players and new entrants to the Colombian market. 2, we adjust the environmental licensing process, the licensing process for renewable energy projects, becoming more efficient and eliminated unnecessary paperwork. We also made the VAT, the VAT exemption on solar panels and other equipment, eliminated the red tape and democratizing this tax incentive for the whole population. We established a compulsory quota of variable renewables for electricity distribution companies, in which 10% of the energy delivered to final consumer has to come from these sources by 2022. These were complemented with other policies directed towards capital incentive industries, such as reducing the corporate income tax rate from 33% to 30%, or making all the VAT payments on the acquisition of capital goods 100% creditable towards corporate income tax. Furthermore, a vital tool for mobilizing investments to improve the risk-return profile of renewable energy projects was adopting a renewable energy auction in October 2019 to award long-term PPAs. This auction moved Colombia closer to its target of variable renewables energy in a cost-effective fashion, while increasing reliability and competitiveness against hydro generation. From the seller side, the long-term PPAs resulting from the auction improved the project's bankability and diminished the risk associated to contractual breaches from the buyer side. Buyers also reduced their exposure to volatile spot market prices, while making their energy spending more predictable and ensure more affordable prices to end users. As a result of this action, 1.3 gigawatts of solar and wind projects will be deployed at prices that are very competitive compared to global average prices. These low prices come as a consequence of Colombia's rich wind resources, and our region, La Guajira, has one of the highest wind speeds in the world, and availability of aforementioned fiscal incentives I mentioned before. Also, it's estimated that for more than 2,000 million will be invested and 6,000 new jobs will be created. Now, we are ready to go forward with even more powerful plans to boost Colombian sustainable economic recovery In November 2020, we announced a new auction to be launched in the first quarter of 2021. The conditions of these auctions are still under preparation, but we expect to reach investments of more than $6.8 billion and the generation of 32,000 jobs. At this moment, projects that adds up 5.8 gigawatts are qualified to participate in this auction, which allow us to predict successful results. I firmly believe that the Colombian case is an excellent example of how governments can generate actions to improve renewable investments, liquidity, and diminish early-stage project risks. In the following years, we will focus on creating policies and enable intervention that will introduce new technologies such as green hydrogen, geothermal, and offshore winds. We aim to ensure an inclusive energy transition with an equitable allocation of opportunities among different stakeholders and visible benefits of our users. Many thanks, Mr. Vice President, and thank you for giving us the floor.
Muchas gracias, Colombia. Now I give the floor to Mr. Jean-Pierre Barral from France. Sir, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est un honneur pour...
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's an honor for the French Energy to share our experience with you on the subject of scaling up finance for renewable energy. We're a public French institution. Our priority is to combat climate change, and we allocate about half of our budget to this. And so our remarks will focus on countries from Africa regarding renewable energy, and some subjects were addressed by the excellent panel of speakers. Three main comments. The first comment is on the financial situation for the buyers of electricity, which is frequently complicated. The second point is on the importance of well-structuring calls for tender. And the third point is defining the conditions in local currency. On the first point, today, I think the buyers of electricity are frequently in a funny financial situation for diverse reasons. The situations and circumstances are not adequate, but the technical and commercial approaches have to be improved. And the overall circumstances, framework conditions are not ideal, but the situation with the COVID has exacerbated everything, obviously made it much more complicated. Hence, the importance of putting into place guarantees. And so the payments by public companies will take place and guarantee programs will exist. The European Commission talked about that. There'll be support from the European Commission and the French agency to help secure that. But public companies have a duty to significantly invest in the network, in the grid, because in many countries it will be necessary to invest in the grid and to further increase the amount of renewable energy available to such countries. And we talked about transmission, we talked about the capacity of storage, of dispatch. It's our duty. Will continue to call upon public finances for that. Secondly, it's important to emphasize what Colombia mentioned just before I spoke. The best way of limiting the risk of poor payment problems is having lowest possible energy prices. So we have to have a clear structuring approach to calls for tender to attain this objective. And I want to focus attention on the solar risk mitigation in cities program conducted by the World Bank with the support of the French Development Agency and others, which has produced an excellent guide on the way these calls for tender for renewable energy forms are being deployed for emerging economies. And finally, the funding of renewable energy in terms of long-term financing, it's frequently under conditions to render the tariffs much more attractive. The maturity of this financing could increase, I think. And in many countries, financial markets are not sufficiently developed or have the sufficient financial maturity to use them. The consequence is that the currencies tend to be in dollars or in euros. So the electricity or energy prices have to bear the currency risk as a result. So if you have financing in local currency, by financing local public banks of the long term, and by supporting the currency exchange with various mechanisms, so the local currency is the one which is most frequently used for public buyers. I'd like to thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Now, I will give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. John Usamate from Fiji. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice President, for giving me the opportunity. I enjoyed the transition this morning, and it's a good morning from here from Fiji. Fiji is a small island in the Pacific. We currently have renewable energy of around 55 to 60% every year, with a target to go to 100% by the year 2026, using other renewable energy sources such as biomass, solar, and wind. But to be able to do that, we will need around US 1.67 billion. That is money that is always hard to find in small developing countries. Obviously, the alternatives being discussed here, getting the private sector into this endeavor as much as possible, is something that we would like to do. However, there's always a challenge in developing countries, small developing countries, because of our small economies of scale of generating projects to an extent where investors are willing or want to be able to be participating in investing in. We've had some good success with the program for sustainable energy financing program. There's work for Fiji and now it's being rolled out to the Pacific Island. But we need more programs like this because that particular program gives the incentive for banks to lend out small entrepreneurs because it reduces the risk that they have. The areas in which we have had more success in getting financing across the renewable energy solar program is where we've been able to call upon funding like the Green Climate Fund and tie this up with our multilateral donor agencies. There are a number of projects that are happening in Fiji in that particular space on the islands of Ovalau and Karuki, where we are able to join up with agencies like the Korean International Cooperation Agency, tap into the fundings from the Green Climate Fund, and use this as a basis to develop a renewable energy program. So programs like the Green Climate Fund are very good for small island nations like ourselves. But our challenge has always been in accessing this due to the complex criteria that they have and the process that they have. So for small island nations, we have to often resort to engaging experts and professionals to prepare project proposals at a very large cost. And that leads to a lot of problems on our part. So any support from IRANA in sort of technical and financial support to strengthen and enhance our human and institutional capacity in this area is something that we will always welcome. So with these things, with technical and financial support and partnerships with our bilateral and multilateral organizations, we look forward to being able to constantly renew and enhance our renewable energy sector in the Pacific and in particular in small island developing states like Fiji and decided that one size fits all may not be applicable to all of us, but due to our geographical locations, and that's the right one. But I think the discussion has been very fruitful. We thank Irena for putting it together, and we look forward to being able to learn and make use of innovative financial solutions. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Fiji. Now I give the floor to Mr. Valery Kotsyuba from Ukraine. Ukraine, you have the floor.
Dear Honorable Vice President, Director General, dear colleagues and participants of the Assembly, first of all, many thanks for the opportunity to have a brief speech, and congratulations on the happy new 2021. We hope it would be very resultive in green energy transition of our economies. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine and on my own, I would like to thank you, the international organization ARENA, for the high results achieved during the 2020 year, despite the negative global impact of COVID-19 on our economies. The European Green Deal reflects ambitious goals to reduce CO2 emissions by 50–55% in 2030 and make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And Ukraine is already developing our roadmap for preparing the implementation of the European Green Deal. A powerful tool for decarbonization is the development of renewable energy in combination with energy efficiency, and Ukraine is in line with global trends in the transition to renewable energy sources. We have our national strategy goal to reach 25% of renewables in energy mix by 2035, and achieving this goal requires attracting sustainable and affordable funding. The potential for attracting green funding in Ukraine is estimated at more than $70 billion by 2030. In 2018–2019, the installed capacities in Ukraine were significantly increased, and an auction model of renewable support is introduced this year. For today, the capacity of renewable electricity has been increased to 13.2 gigawatt, and about 13% of energy production from renewable sources in the electricity sector has been achieved. In 2020, Ukraine exceeded its commitments to build solar capacities 1.5 times. At the same time, the National Action Plan till 2020 for the construction of wind generation facilities was fulfilled only by 50%. The level of green tariff support is almost the highest compared to other countries. This year, a new model of supporting renewable energy sources will be launched through the allocation of construction quotas at auctions. The introduction of green bond market would create a multiplier effect for attracting investments and allow Ukraine to use the potential to attract green funding. We are open to discuss and implement joint green energy projects in Ukraine, and I invite everyone to cooperate with Ukrainian government. Green transition means a conscious investment in modern technologies. As a rule, these are significant funds that the Ukrainian market needs now. We would like to emphasize the collaborative frameworks initiative, which has shown its high efficiency, and we want to assure you once again that Ukraine is interested and ready to actively participate in the further work of existing platforms on green hydrogen, like collaborative framework on green hydrogen, collaborative framework on enhancing the dialogue on high shares of renewable energy system, so that we propose and open Ukrainian energy market to the stakeholders. And in this regard, we also developed an international, with international partners support, the web platform uamap.org.ua, which accumulates information on successfully implemented and potential projects on energy efficiency, renewable energy sector. Currently, interested market participants can find detailed information on the map of 147 implemented and 198 potential projects that require investments in amount of 5 billion euros. And to achieve these goals of renewable energy development, energy efficiency, and the use of alternative fuels, the ministry has initiated the establishment in Ukraine Green Investment Fund to attract soft loans and long-term funding for green energy projects, because we feel a lack of such financial instrument in Ukraine. It is expected that the fund will participate in development qualitative feasibility studies partially co-finance and assist in the implementation of sustainable development projects in Ukraine. Thus, the fund's participation in projects will help attract loans, grants, and investments in municipal and commercial projects here. Given the above, the creation of such institution will remove a number of barriers and facilitate the deployment of transparent new green energy projects in Ukraine, and we are welcoming investment companies and funds for negotiations to be engaged in green investment fund creation in Ukraine. On the way to decarbonization, we are working on the development of the sustainable biofuel market. Ukraine, as you know, is an agrarian country and has significant bioenergy potential, which can replace the use of 37 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. And we are working on legislation of biomethane, liquid biofuels market, solid biofuels market creation, and cultivation of energy crops growing for further burning it in the CHP power plants. I am confident that the measures taken by each country will ensure the achievements of carbon neutral economy, and we are open to cooperation to ensure a global energy transition. And of course, in continuation of the agreements reached by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine with the IRENA management during his last year's visit to Abu Dhabi, we express our readiness to participate more actively in the agency's bodies, approve and support the climate investment program launched in 2019. The series of investment forums in key regions of the world really shows a good result of our further extension of our collaboration. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Mr. Pavel Shnikars from the Russian Federation. Sir, you have the floor.
Добрый вечер, уважаемые коллеги. Позвольте поблагодарить генерального директора Международного агентства.
Greetings to the Secretary General, Mr. Karuki, organized during the 11th session of Assembly of IRENA, this ministerial roundtable. The development of the Renewable is one of the main directions of the development in the Russian Federation. So we do everything possible to be in the forefront of this movement. I would like to say that we never say that we have a direct governmental financing of this project. Practically, we don't have it. We try to use the mechanism from the government that we rely on the best practices of the world. The Russian practice practically include the solar, wind energy, also biofuel energy, biomass, etc. The mechanism that we already have with the assistance of IRENA helped us to create many more gigawatts. Most of them, the plants of wind and solar energy. Every year we have tenders. This later on we based on the agreements to provide renewables. They will be paid, but they have to provide this based on the rules and regulations of the Russian Federation. But Russian Federation needs the investments with the documents for banking support. We understand that the renewables are growing fast, so the price has dropped. And this policy has led to the development in the Russian Federation, the energy plant building. We really have now 900 megawatts in the year, and we have potential growth to 1,500 megawatt next year. To 2036, we will grow even more in the Russian Federation. With the optimization, we can choose from the different projects where they have a better bankable possibilities. Also, we do not forget about the IRENA projects with the even low segments, micro generation, 15 megawatts based on VIA rules. The generators will have opportunities to sell their resting energy. We also foresee the plans for microgeneration. So these projects will be available for any possible participants. Also, we are working on carbon neutrality in this regard. To resolve this issue, we try to introduce the Institute of the carbon neutral certificates. These certificates will show that the company works using the best practices. In the near future, we would like to integrate it with the international system of product certification. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to speak. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Russian Federation. Last but not least, I give the floor to Mr. Dinesh Kumar Kimir from Nepal. Sir, you have the floor.
President of the Assembly, Director General of IRENA, Excellencies, distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. Namaste to you all from Nepal. On behalf of the government of Nepal, it gives me tremendous pleasure to address the 11th Assembly of the International Renewable Energy Agency and related meetings. I wish to congratulate the IRENA for their commendable initiative on providing this platform for the countries to delve into the matter of achieving green recovery as the world continues to contest with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government of Nepal very much appreciates IRENA's efforts in providing technical and financial assistance for renewable energy projects in developing countries. And many thanks to the organizing team for this opportunity to share our aspirations on scaling up finance for renewables. Government of Nepal has prioritized energy sector as a key driver for meeting the government's vision of prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. Nepal's energy sector is widely recognized as being the key to the nation's future economic growth and the vehicle that will enable Nepal to meet its development goals. However, Nepal relies heavily on traditional biomass and imported fossil fuels to meet its energy demand. The dependence on imported fossil fuels has not only widened the trade deficit, but has also made Nepal very susceptible to the risk of energy security. The largest available renewable energy resource is hydropower, with potential of approximately 83,000 megawatts, while the current installed capacity is only 1,430 megawatt. 90% of Nepali population has access to electricity from grid and off-grid supply, and electricity consumption is 260 kilowatt hours per capita. Nepal's SDG roadmap aims to increase the installed capacity to 15,000 megawatts, provide electricity access to 100% population, and increase electricity consumptions to 1,500 kilowatt hours per capita by 2028. With an ample solar radiation intensity and sunshine on an average of 300 days in a year, there is great potential for harnessing solar energy as well in Nepal. Various studies also suggest good potential on wind energy in Nepal. Furthermore, the South Asia region has been witnessing a rise on cross-border electricity exchange. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, the government of Nepal has a strong commitment towards the renewable energy sector. Established in 1996, Alternative Energy Promotion Center, the national agency mandated for renewable energy and energy efficiency, has been dedicating its efforts in the development and promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency in the country. The agency has also made Nepal proud as the first direct access entity from Nepal accredited by the Green Climate Fund. Considering the need to further strengthen the sector and to embrace the federal structure, the government of Nepal has initiated the process of drafting the Renewable Energy Promotion Bill and the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Bill. The 15th periodic plan of the country has prioritized to proliferate the electricity production and usage of renewable energy resources in the country. We have recently submitted our second nationally determined contributions 2020 to UNFCCC, which depicts our ambitious targets on renewable and clean energy for the next decade to mitigate emissions and increase resilience of vulnerable communities to adapt to the impacts of climate change. The second NDC prioritizes on electric mobility and electric cooking and aims to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, being a least developed country, Nepal has not been able to effectively scale up investment in renewables for the low carbon and climate resilient programs. Private sector needs to be incentivized in order to de-risk their initial investment in renewable energy sector. The targets set by the second NDC are mostly conditional and contingent upon mobilization of external resources. Thus, the nation needs financial and technical assistance for implementing innovative and cost-effective approaches for scaling up the renewable energy projects in the country for climate change mitigation and adaptation and sustainable development. The success of these potential projects will trigger an uptake of the innovative mechanism at the national level, thus creating a steady pipeline of investor-ready and scalable projects. We truly believe that with the strategic frameworks in place, as a developing nation, Nepal requires a steady flow of funds in the renewable energy sector to ensure economic prosperity and scaling up renewable energy while mitigating the climate risk. Today, I take this opportunity to invite you all to invest in the renewable energy sector of Nepal and join hands for mutually beneficial economic partnership. Finally, I wish the 11th Assembly of IRENA a great success and hope for further cooperation in the renewable energy sector development in Nepal. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Nepal. With this, we conclude the list of countries that wanted to take part of this very fruitful discussion and very important meeting. I give the floor now to the Director General to address the issues raised and some overall reflections. Director General, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Allow me to, first of all, to thank you for moderating this long, interesting session. And naturally, my gratitude goes also to the Peruvian Minister for the excellent moderation of the panel. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. All the relevant themes are linked to the effectiveness of providing the right financial resources for the energy transformation has been touched. Just to mention the necessity to have a legal environment in place that may really possible for investment to come and at an acceptable risk, the involvement of the local financial institutions, the value of platform for mitigating the risk of investments, the importance of the partnership between the private and public, the private and public, the importance of having a set of bankable projects. Has been said, the financial resources are there. What is missing are the good projects, the bankable projects, and sometimes the legal environment they may allow for investment. So we have also learned about the role of what some of the most important multilateral institutions are already doing on this field. We have also listened to the recall of the importance of the pension fund, so the sovereign funds, and all this in make also contribute to build the idea on where we can put the efforts of ARENA in facilitating the matching between demand and supply when we talk about project and we talk about funding. And also being as emphasized the technical assistance importance. And lastly, if I can say, I have also understand with and the appreciation, and I appreciate how to say, the value that many of you intervening in this debate has shown for the role that ARENA is playing in this being closer to the ground and having this facilitating role that has already proven to get some result already in very difficult and virtual reality. Allow me at the end to give my thanks to all the people that has worked today on ARENA to host such a very organized meeting. And I wish to thank the interpreters that, as usual, has pushed their work beyond the limits. I also wish to thank all the technicians that has been really made an excellent job. We have been able to go in two parallel events, and I think this is remarkable with this quality of the images and sound. And naturally, the secretariat, all people that has been involved in maintaining the relationship with the moderator, with the vice president today, so the chair, and providing for insightful inputs to discussion here today. So again, thanks. I think has been a very, very rich discussion that may help also ARENA to start working in his proposal to the medium-term planning that we have to present to the next assembly. I think this discussion provide us with many inputs in this respect. So thank you very much again to all, and excuse me, I forgot someone. And we conclude as mention again one sentence coming from my friend Dr. Tani. We have all to work together. So we need to have everyone on board, public, private, companies, utilities, renewable as oil, gas company that are one of the subjects, one of the main actors of the transformation. So thank you very much, and back to you, my dear Vice President. Back to you, thanks.
Thank you very much, Director General, for your remarks and also for your kind words. Let me add my voice to your recognition of the work of the interpreters and all the support team in this very important meeting. In closing, I would like to inform you that Switzerland will report back to plenary on Thursday, 21st of January, on these important discussions that we have had today. Let me also express my gratitude to all the participants. Thank you for your positive and constructive meeting. This concludes our consideration of the Ministerial Plenary meeting, Scaling Up Finance for Renewables. Have a good day, and this meeting is adjourned.